Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the April meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. The public will be read at the start of the meeting. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco? Here. Mr. Bishada?
Here.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Sayak?
Here. Can I have a motion for executive session?
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. Would you read the resolution, please?
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of and action upon the hereinafter specified subject matters. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel, including but not limited to agenda items. Matters falling under attorney-client privilege related to the KL settlement, MR settlement, and health insurance rates, and negotiations with the SEA, SSA, and SPA. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Can we also add attorney-client privilege, bomber trademark,
Sure.
and attorney-client privilege, board member ethics?
And I have a question on the closed session minutes. Can I do that in public, or do I have to do that in closed?
Closed session minutes will probably, would be discussed in closed, so we can do it under, is it about the content of the minutes? Or is it about a question, is it an attorney question, or is it about whether something should be in there or not?
Yeah, something I would like changed in the minutes. I don't know if that's something I can do in public. Are these minutes public? Is the closed session minutes a public record?
When the reason for disclosure no longer, or non-disclosure no longer exists, technically, so you could, people can request them and then we'd have to redact them. So I think what we should, the best thing to do would be to bring that issue to the attention separately of the business administrator. I don't think there's an exception under which we could discuss it in closed. I think you have to bring it to the business administrator separately, or the board secretary in this capacity, and then she would revise the minutes accordingly if there's something in there that shouldn't, that shouldn't be in there. The board ultimately votes on those things by, do you vote on closed session minutes?
Yes.
So you would it would incorporate your proposed changes.
But the board can't discuss the closed session minutes in
I just don't
closed.
Well, maybe I could do it in public. I'll just ask you then. I'll ask you if I can do it in public.
Let me ask you this question. Is there a way for you to discuss in public what's there without revealing any confidential information?
I think, in my opinion, yes, but I was just checking with you.
Why don't we talk on way in,
Okay.
just so I get more detail?
Good, okay.
Yep.
Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bishada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Sayak?
Yes. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call the April meeting of the Board of Education to order. Take notice, this public meeting of the Sayreville Board of Ed was emailed to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, in accordance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, further in accordance with NJSA 10:4-621. A copy is posted outside the Secretary's office, also filed with the Clerk of the Borough of Sayreville. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Hill, roll call, please.
Mr. Balca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mr. Bishada?
Present.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Rubio?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Sayak?
Here. Could you please review what we discussed in executive?
The board discussed personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, matters falling under attorney-client privilege related to the KL settlement, MR settlement, the bomber trademark, board member ethics, and negotiations for the SEA, SSA, and SPA.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lewis, your student council representative report.
Good evening, everyone. I first want to start off by acknowledging everyone here today with the White Division champions for the boys basketball, boys wrestling, boys and girls winter track, as well as the top 10 students this year and the students of the year. Moving along, I have to say that girls' state interviews occurred yesterday, and while there are no boys' state interviews for Sayreville this year, girls' state interviews went fairly well, and 2 girls will be chosen to attend in late June. Bubble soccer is also coming up. Student Council does this annually, and forms are due tomorrow, so teams will be made as soon as possible, and that will start in late April. Junior and senior prom are right around the corner. Junior prom is actually next Friday, so a lot of students in the school are really getting pumped for that. The Bishop Bar College Fair, which was supposed to be last month, is now this Monday. Students will get to tour around and see, a lot of juniors will get to tour around and see what colleges and what they have to offer. And this doesn't affect the park scheduling that is happening this week and next week in the high school. Spring sports are also in full mode now, but just still waiting on the spring weather. Baseball, baseball and golf have a lot of games and matches this week, and track actually had a meet today as well as Saturday in East Brunswick. The NHS induction ceremony is tomorrow, and the NHS spaghetti dinner for the brain-injured children, all the money goes to them. That's Thursday night, so make sure to come and donate, and it's for a good cause. Another thing for a good cause was the sad blood drive that happened last week. A lot of people donated blood for a good cause, and Mr. Sayreville will also take place this Friday at 7, so be sure to make it there. It should be an entertaining night. Scheduling is coming to a close, but AP testing is starting early May, so we're right around the corner, home stretch of the final year, and powder puff practice starts this week. It actually starts maybe tomorrow, and then the juniors and seniors are getting their teams ready, as well as the volleyball tournament for the seniors, which is starting soon as well. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Any board members with questions? He's getting really good at this.
I have a question.
Dr. Labby.
How about the tennis team? I know that the golf team has had to reschedule a lot. Has the tennis team got out there on the court yet?
I know they practice a lot. I know Mr. Provenza, but I'm not as up to date on the tennis
So
team.
Ms. Padami is holding up 2 fingers, so two matches? Fantastic, in the 39-degree weather. Thank you.
One quick question, should I get my powder blue tux ready for the junior prom?
Totally.
Yeah, for 84? All right,
I'm ready. Big cummerbund.
you better make sure there's a good 70s list.
Any other questions for our student representative? All right, then we will kick off next with our presentations.
Great job, Mr. Lewis, as always. Thank you, Mr. Syak. I'd like to welcome everyone. It's very interesting how we set up our schedule. The last board meeting was well attended as well, and to no surprise, we had our SAMCEL students. So these next 3 meetings are always my favorite, beginning with the Let the Students Lead, which was the last meeting where our SAMCEL students came and they doubled up with all of us and had a chance to spend a day in the life of an administrator or Board of Education member. This meeting is a meeting where we recognize all of our exceptional students. And boy, do we have many exceptional students to recognize, celebrate, and honor tonight. Not only students that demonstrate great ability in track or in basketball or on the wrestling mat, but students that also demonstrate that exceptional ability in the classroom and even outside of the classroom, whether it's in the community or in the school, doing things outside of their academics. So it's a really big night. I'm so happy to see so many people here. We also have our media specialists here somewhere who are going to give us a very special presentation on celebrating libraries. So we're looking forward to that as well. To kick things off, I'm going to ask Mr. Syak, our Board of Education President, to join me, as well as Mr. Brown, the principal of the Sayreville War Memorial High School, so we can recognize what we commonly refer to as Sayreville War Memorial High School's top 10 students. Mr. Syak, Mr. Brown. Oh, and by the way, I'd like to put a shout shout out to Mr. Brown and Ms. Badami, who is our athletic director, for our media drop. If you haven't seen it yet, we've been tweeting out a lot of shots of kids when they are actually signing to go to a particular college. And the two of them thought this would be a great addition to Sayreville War Memorial High School. I absolutely agree, and I thank them so much for the direction they have taken in terms of doing that for us. If you haven't had a chance to see it when the meeting's over, go ahead and take a picture in front of it. Sure.
We'd like to bring it next door, and if anybody wants to take a picture at the end of the ceremony, at the end of the recognition, they can do that. All right, so we'll bring that next door. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to recognize our top 10 students. These are the students who have achieved academic excellence here at our high school, and we commend them for not only the work that they've done senior year, but this is something that they embark on in kindergarten. Even though, the GPA for your top 10 status really is only calculated for your high school years, it's the foundation that starts in kindergarten that really builds up to being able to achieve this level of success. And I really want to commend not only the top 10 students, but also all of their friends, their parents, their family members who have supported them throughout this endeavor of theirs, because it really does take a village to achieve this level of student achievement in our district, and we're really, really proud of the work that all of you have done. So we're going to call up all of our top 10 students one at a time, and then I think it's appropriate we'll do a board photo with our top 10 as well. So the board can fix your hair, fix your makeup. We're going to do a nice photo. We're going to start out with number 10, Anchor Vijay Varghia. Number 9, Naomi Aziz. Number 8, Dylan Lamb. Number 7, Supriya Iyer. Number 7, Jonathan Ian Ballin. Number 6, Harshal Trivedi. And I think I lost count over here. You were number 5? He's 5. Number 4 is Hamidul Islam. Number 3, Ashley Gordon. Congratulations. Number 2, and our salutatorian, Michael George Phillip. The valedictorian of the class of 2018, Kathleen Beeben. Congratulations. Beeben. You know what? I rehearsed it and I still said it wrong. Kathleen Beeben. Congratulations to the top 10 of the class of 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Sayak. We actually have two more incredibly special students to recognize and honor tonight. And to do that, I'm going to ask Mrs. Bloom to come on up and help me, as well as Mr. Brown when Mr. Brown's finished moving the media drop. Oh, we can't get it through the door? Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't top 10, but I can see that.
Good evening. This is very special to me. I have been attending this ceremony since I was elected to the board. I also serve on the Middlesex County School Board Association Board of Directors. And Kevin always praises everything that goes on, and he's got me hooked. This is not necessarily the most high-ranking student, although it could be. The Middlesex County Association of School Administrators and the Middlesex County School Board Association recognize outstanding students every year, and there are generally 2 from every high school. When we get there, Mr. Sayak compiles all of their information, so we never know exactly who each child is or what their situation is. Many, many of the kids who come to this dinner are handicapped. I get emotional when I think about it because they're so incredible. But they have overcome many obstacles. Many of the students who are honored have gone above and beyond. They're just really great kids who have done something special. And I think we have 2 of those here tonight. So I am going to ask Amen Khan and Connor McCabe to please come up and get their certificate.
And also for Connor, on behalf of the Arlitt School, we cannot thank you enough. You mind if I share with people? As part of his Eagle Scout badge, correct, Connor? He constructed pretty much a library, a garden patio outside. What would you call it? The garden patio, right? The greenhouse. For the Arlitt School. So if you have a child at Arlitt, even if you don't have a child at Arlitt, let me know. I'll take you over. He did an incredible job, and the students and the staff at Arlitt can't thank you enough, and this entire district can't thank you enough for your handiwork, but also your community service, my friend. You did a great job, and we're very proud of you. We're very proud of both of you. Thank you so much for representing this school district in the impeccable manner that you guys have.
And at this dinner, folks, we honored 63 students from across the county who basically epitomized these types of characteristics. Some did overcome significant disabilities, but some contributed to their communities in outstanding ways. Some have demonstrated outstanding levels of academic achievement, and it's really phenomenal what they've accomplished from across the county. And each school only gets to nominate 2 individuals.
Okay, and naturally, we have some more amazing students, in this case, student athletes, that we want to recognize and celebrate and honor, as well as 3 very special coaches, 2 of which were named Coaches of the Year. To help me introduce the first set of students, I'm going to ask Mr. Walsh to come on up and join me.
Thank you, and good evening. It's truly, as a Sayreville alumni, it makes me so proud to come here and see how many outstanding students we have, both in the classroom and in athletics. That photo right there was the closest I ever was to a top 10, by far. And even though I wasn't top 10, though, I did know that that board wasn't going to fit through that door. I learned. But no, it's really a credit to our administrators, our teachers. You know, at Board of Ed, we put people in place. We're not educating how to run a school, but we have great people here who run great programs, and we have great students who reap those benefits. You know, the great Coach Wooden said, it's the little details that are vital. Little things make big things happen. And you can see some of the big things that are going on here at Sayreville all the time, and especially tonight. And I'm so glad to honor our 2017-18 Boys White Division Championship basketball team. I was lucky enough to work with Coach Wojcik, or as the old-time Sayreville people call him, Coach Vojic, the V thing. But he's one of those guys who pays attention to the little things. All these athletes are here tonight in all the sports. We're seeing them honored tonight, but we're not seeing the sweat they put in the weight room, the work they do in the classroom, the work they do in the off season, the extra practices, all the time they put in that it takes. It's all those little things that make tonight possible. So, again, it's my great honor to call up Coach Wojcik, who always pays attention to all the little things. I'm going to let him announce his team because he knows these guys better than me. But he's one of those guys who I'm making a speech every year about him because they keep winning. But more importantly, he teaches character and discipline and teammanship. And I'm honored to have him here working for us. I'm honored that I got to work with him. He's a class guy all around. So, Coach Wojcik.
All right, just got done working with some of our future, 2 hours at camp, so running over here from there. I'm just going to call up some of the guys that made this year another special year, our third White Division Championship in a row, 4 out of the last 5 years, so it's a good feeling to be up here and being honored. We appreciate that greatly, and we want to take it one more step forward and win a county championship next year. So I'm just going to call up the guys. Captain Derek Astorita. Kaim Byers. Elijah Clark. Jake Daughtery. Anthony Gambardella. Joe Gottstein. Zaire Jackson. Zach Kazmarek. Robert Krolik. Jaywan Macklin. James Rick. Patrick Seckman. Eric Sokolowski. Elijah Thomason. Luca Ventricelli. Curtis Morris III. Assistant coaches Corey Bennett. I don't think he's here. And Pete McCarney.
Okay, we've just gotten started here. For our next group, I would like Mr. Esposito to join me up front. Oh, there we go.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. It's interesting, you know, we're here tonight to celebrate a team achievement in a sport that a lot of times recognizes individual accomplishments. You know, but Olympic gold medalist Stan Grable once said, "I never won anything by myself. I was always strong because of help I received, which gave me the extra strength to win." So, you know, guys, when your coach asks you to wrestle in a weight that you might not be comfortable in, or to lose or gain weight before the season because the team needs that, or to follow a game plan that they put together that, if executed correctly, will equal to success. Those things aren't always easy to do, but you guys absolutely accepted all of them because that's what successful teams do. You put yourself before the team. You put the team before yourself. Don't get me wrong. Okay. And as a result, we're here tonight to honor you guys as White Division champions. So on behalf of the administration, the Board of Education, we're very proud of you. Congratulations. We wish you continued success. And I am not going to hand out the certificates. I'm going to ask the head coach to do that. And the head coach this year, I believe, Coach Ivy, this is your 6th year as head coach of the varsity team? Yes, it is. Okay, first division championship, hopefully many, many more to come. But I want a round of applause for Coach Ivy because this year he was named District 19 Coach of the Year, White Division Coach of the Year, and Home News Tribune Coach of the Year. So congratulations, Coach. If you want to come up and give your team the certificates, please.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to call up my wonderful coaches to help out with the awards. But first, so my coaches are going to be Phil Bouchard. Come on up here, let's go. Rich Bates. And one of the volunteer coach we had this year is a full-time state trooper, Sayreville's winningest wrestler in school history, highest state placer in school history, and that's Ramon Santiago. So if you don't know wrestling, again, I think people already know wrestling is a pretty unique sport. It's the only sport where in a game plan you plan on losses. It's the only sport where you can go into a match and say, these losses are okay and this is okay if losses happen this way. And yet if you do your job, the team will walk away with a win. So it's a difficult thing to ask kids to do. They don't really understand it some of the times, but they have faith in the coaches, faith in their teammates, that if they do the right thing, they do their job, the team will walk out with a win. And we did that pretty well this season. We finished with a record of 20-5, and we did an exceptionally this season. So I'm going to call up the guys. I'm going to start actually with the ladies. We have 4 of the best young ladies you could have in the business, 4 of the best managers you could have. That's Kayla Metz, Alicia Fiola, Sam Goldfarb, and Ashley Herndon. Rest of the lineup, Dylan Acevedo. I'm gonna call the guys up. We got a lot. I'm gonna call the guys up, and we can do a big round of applause at the end. Elijah Ade Festus, Brandon Alisea, Benedict Arthur, Aaron Bartlett, Connor Bouchard, Diego Candelario, Alec Coelho, Christian Dean Ja, Brian De Oliveira, Anthony Esposito, Darren Figueroa, Kyle Finn, Joe Gonce, Tristan Hidalgo, Jaden Johnson, Mihailo Halabunyak, Savon Kirksey, Trevor Mestorio, Scott Mish, Max Milodovic, Marcos Morera, Nino Oneta, Joe Precaro, Vincent Reback, Jalen Roman, Narayan Sadowski, Sohaib Safri, Joseph Ventimiglia, Jake Wagner. That is the 2017-18 White Division Championship team. Overlap. All of you guys, take 2 steps forward. 2 steps forward. All you guys, fill in behind them.
See, that's a phys ed teacher. They know how to. That's how you do it. See, those are the things other teachers struggle with. Phys ed teacher, bang, bang. Fit yourself.
Again, whether it was a varsity wrestling match, a JV wrestling match, also our JV team won our JV tournament for the first time in school history. But at any level, this was absolutely a team effort, and it's unique because wrestling is always considered an individual sport. But when you really think about it, it's the only sport in which your job matters more than anything else. And I think it's the ultimate team sport. And again, congratulations to this team, these coaches. I think they did an amazing job this year.
And before Dr. Labby continues, I just want to say to the groups, first of all, congratulations, but also for those of you, especially those of you who are watching at home, I know a lot of people just think, when they think of Sayreville High School, they think of sports, they think of athletics. When you look at who we honored here tonight, you see the diversity of what we represent. The top 10 students, an Eagle Scout, students who have overcome obstacles, students who have contributed in a unique way, and also our sports programs and our Coach of the Year. So we are a comprehensive school district. Dr. Labby, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Sayak. And we have one more special group for you this evening, and another coach who was named Coach of the Year. And to help me celebrate and honor those students and staff members, I'm going to ask Mr. Callahan to join me up front.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm one of the newest board members, and really it's what an honor and a privilege to be here tonight honoring these great teams, great coaches, great students. I'm just going to continue with the awards. We've got another White Division champs. We've got another Coach of the Year, as Dr. Labby was saying. As many of you may or may not know, I work for a different township, and Mr. Walsh and I were teasing. Obviously, I wasn't on the basketball team or anything like that, but I did coach track and I did coach wrestling, so I know about the long days for track and the long Saturdays and the long meets. And certainly winter track does get the privilege of being indoors and not exposed to the elements like we do have in the spring track, but still hard work and dedication by all the student athletes, the coaches, and parents involved as well. So again, I'm just going to introduce the coach, and I'm going to let him introduce his team. We want to certainly welcome another Coach of the Year. I know he's been here for at least 4 or 5 years. I'm not sure exactly how many years, but Joseph Pasfa, Coach of the Year. Round of applause. Better.
This is your second consecutive, correct?
There we go, second consecutive. It's yours, and then I think everything's in here.
Hello, thank you again for inviting the team here tonight and honoring us. The track team works incredibly hard and has been enjoying a lot of success over the last couple of years. This is the girls' third White Division championship in a row. It's the first time in school history they've done that. For the boys, it's the first time we've gone back-to-back for White Division championships in 10 years. So we've been having a ton of success. This year alone, we had 8 students named to the Alt-White Division team. We had 2 students named to the All-Conference team, and we had 2 young ladies make it to the Meet of Champions. On top of that, this current class, our juniors and seniors, currently holds 8 of the school records and keeps breaking them month after month after month. So this is an incredibly talented team that we've been fortunate enough to work with over the last several years and look forward to continuing to work with. I'd like to call up the assistant coaches first. First, our sprint and hurdle coach, Mary Beth Drabick. The self-proclaimed distance coordinator and endurance specialist, Steve Logan. You gotta make up with that. Also, they're not here tonight, but I would like to also thank our 2 volunteers, Coach Garcia, Eugene Garcia, who works with throwers, and Maura Johnson, who's our strength and conditioning coach. Without them, we wouldn't have the success that we've been having over the last several seasons. I will apologize. We have a million names, and we did have a meet just prior to this, so I'm sure most of the athletes, are home working on their homework, not here tonight. So I do apologize for that. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we do, and now we don't. All right, starting off with the boys, Abdullah Adeyemo. Ray Ajala, Jakari Carter, Patrick Conlon, Kai Cox Allison, Armand Jayanth, Josh Jones, Vince Mandola, Brett Moran, Justin Moran, Nick Mulliken, Josh Naratko, Abraham Ohiakai Benson, John Reveron, Dylan Rodriguez, Ibrahim Sano, Matt Stowe, Robert Voto, Zaire Wright, Zarel Wright, and that's it for the boys team. All right, now on to the girls, and just an additional, I know neither of them are here right now, but we also did just this morning have our signing ceremony for two of our seniors. Ashley Edwards will be attending Rowan next year, where she'll be long jumping, high jumping, triple jumping, and Kayla Rosario will be attending Rutgers University, where she'll be doing distance. We're also waiting on one final signing. Jasmine Van Noot is also expected to sign with Rutgers for throwing. Okay, now on to the girls. Juliana Castlegrant, Isabella Dabrowski, Christina DeSarno, Ashley Edwards, Samantha Harris, Victoria Hermanowski, Ruth Aitua, Samantha Camara, Alyssa Leshy, Leah Lopez, London Martinez, Jordan Deli, Miranda Porta, Allison Prieto, Kayla Rosario, Adija Simon, Agata Sroden, Jasmine Van Noot, and Mona Yon.
Okay, Mr. Sayak, we have one last presentation for you, a very special presentation. And I'm going to ask Ms. Gunter and all of our media specialists that are present tonight to come on up and join me, and Ms. Obrick. As some of you may or may not know, this month is Celebrate Libraries Month, correct? And to help us celebrate our libraries, our media specialists, along with Ms. Obrick, have put together a very special presentation for you. So I'm going to hand the baton, track and field, off to you.
This is a little bit of a tough act to follow, but good evening, everyone. My name is Nina Obrick. One of my roles here in district is the honor of supervising our school's media specialists. Since about the mid-1980s, we have recognized April as School Library Month. It's a time to celebrate our school librarians and the essential role that strong school library programs play in transforming our children's learning. Now, in my teaching career, I was very fortunate to work with several very talented school media specialists, and I've seen the impact that they have on the students, on the teachers, on an entire climate of a building. And I'm happy and proud to say that 3 of those women stand before you tonight. I would like to introduce Mrs. Gunter from the Arlith School Library, Mrs. Dobrinsky from our middle school library, and Mrs. Desmond from the SUES library. Mrs. Gunter.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Sayak, members of the board, Dr. Labby, and administrators for giving us this opportunity to share what our school libraries mean to the Sayreville community. Mrs. Desmond has been kind enough to create an Animoto video, which we'll show you in a few minutes, using images from each of our schools that captures the spirit of our students and the creativity of our libraries. We hope that, well, we wanted you to know that our programs cross curriculum content with personal interests, help students apply what they are learning in creative ways, and librarians teach students how to organize, analyze, and evaluate the tsunami of information that they encounter every day on the internet, especially crucial in this age of fake news, so that they're aware that they can't trust everything that's out there, and they can learn to sift through it and figure out what is valuable. We hope that as you watch this video tonight and hear some comments afterwards made by some of our students, that you'll keep in mind there are 2 pieces of legislation pending in the New Jersey State Legislature right now. The first bill would mandate a certain ratio of certified school librarians per number of students in each school in the state, and the companion piece would require instruction in information literacy, which includes but is not limited to technology in all K-12 schools. We need your support in contacting your local legislators to ask them to vote for these bills to ensure that all New Jersey students have the same opportunities that benefit Sayreville students. Students who have access to school libraries and librarians achieve more, score better on tests, and truly become lifelong learners. As Laura Bush once said, libraries allow students to ask questions about the world and find the answers. And the wonderful thing is that once a child learns to use a library, the doors to learning are always open. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the video.
Thank you so much for giving us some time tonight just to share what our school library programs do here at Sayreville. We're very grateful to be here. We're so grateful that our district has school library programs. And we thought we would just finish with some quotes from our students. So they were asked to finish or complete the sentence, "I love my school library because," and here are some of the things that they shared with us. "I love my school library because my librarian always puts a smile on my face and always has great book recommendations that I am happy to read and enjoy."
I love my school library because it has tons of books and my librarian gives us fantastic lessons. Also, the fun activities my librarian plans for us.
"I love my school library because the library provides me a place to learn and read. I wouldn't have known all the things I have learned now if I wasn't allowed to borrow books from my library."
I love my school library because it is calming. I can let my imagination take flight. I learn from the books I check out.
"I love my school library because it opens all new books to me because I normally don't read." And I just have one more. So this one's a heart with a little picture with the librarian and the student. It's very cute. "I love my school library because my librarian is very smart and funny. She helps me do my work so I can finish it. The library has a lot of funny books." So just a little taste of how our students feel about our libraries. It's a pleasure working with them every day, and we're just happy that we could share this with you tonight as well. Thank you so much.
And we love our school library because they're staffed with the most incredibly talented professionals one could ever dream of having. So thank you very, very much for all that you do for all of our students, ladies. And we're saving the best for last.
Actually, Dr. Labby, before we do that, I just want to offer one comment to our
Sure.
librarian media specialists. I want to thank you for that presentation. I had an opportunity to visit a school, and I honestly can't remember where it was, but it was in the United States. But it was an elementary school, and as I walked in, they had this kind of center meeting spot, and they had shelves of books right in the hallway. And I looked at the building principal and I said, "Is this your library?" And the principal said, "Our superintendent made us move all of the books out of the library and into the hall." And I looked at the principal and I said, "Yeah, I've got one of those superintendents too with all these ideas." I said, "So what did you do with your library?" So they took me over to the library, and much of the stuff that you saw, makerspace, 3D printing, even they had forts, these foam blocks where students can put together and build forts because they discovered that their students weren't being creative at home. Many of them had never ever built a fort. Electrical circuit design projects. They were doing all this stuff in the library. And I said to the principal, "Well, who coordinates all of this?" And this lady comes over to me and says, "Hi, I'm the library media specialist." And I looked at her and I said, "Wow," I said, that's really a leap. And she said, "When you think about it, it's really not a leap, because first we had books, and then we had overheads and film strip projectors, and who got put in charge of them? The librarian. And then the computers came into the schools, and where did they go? Into the library. And as the technology advanced, librarians just continued to take on more and more and continue to grow in their profession. So it was a great example, and you highlighted so much of it in the video of how the library has really expanded and the responsibilities have expanded to really include the total school. So thank you very much, and great work.
Now, we know we've had a very busy night in terms of presentations, and this is a presentation that we are required to do. As you know, it used to be that we had to report out on EVVRS twice a year. That has now changed to school safety data. And because of that changeover, they allowed us to extend, but this is the very last possible date that we have to present this. So without any further delay, here is Mr. Glock Malloy to present to you our Period 1 school safety data.
Dr. Labby had asked that we do this in May. Unfortunately, the system was only formally released earlier this month, and it is due at the end of this month. So this was pretty much the only day that we could present this information this year. As we've done in the past, the data basically represents certain information that we have to supply to the state as far as disciplinary acts, acts of violence and vandalism, and our HIB programs within the schools. Within the reports and within the numbers, not every incident that we report necessarily corresponded to a discipline of our code of conduct. Our code of conduct is separate from the information reported to the state. However, there is a lengthy document that's provided to our principals that basically dictates certain information that we have to push forward to the state each year as far as incidents that take place within the school. You can see on this first slide is basically a breakdown of the information that goes to the state on this biannual basis. On this chart, you see our breakdown by school in each of the key categories. Certain information did change between the EVVRS system and the SSDS system, which is why some of these categories down the bottom are listed as NA when comparing to the 17-18 and 16-17 school years. As we go forward into additional years from this point forward, we'll be able to have a more direct comparison. But overall, our numbers stayed pretty consistent. They dropped in some categories, raised in some other categories. But we have a pretty base level for the incidents that were able to be reported year over year. For the incidents that are new, that we didn't have on these reports, we should be able to get a better comparison as we go forward to next year. This other category, which we see some high numbers in the middle school and the high school, that's a new category this year, which basically any removal from the academic environment, which includes both in-school and out-of-school suspensions, now has to be reported to the state. That was not a previous requirement. So those do tend to be higher based on our student code and conduct, but those aren't as severe of consequences as some of the other violence, vandalism, things of that nature. In addition to the safety data system, our HIB trainings and programs are reported through this system on this biannual basis. Trainings in instruction or practice, activities specifically designed to prepare someone to implement a program or strategy, fulfill a responsibility, or implement a skill proficiency. These are some of the training program options that are available for our principals to complete as part of this form, and there is, of course, an other on the bottom for trainings that may take place in our schools in relation to HIB that may not fit into one of these other categories. We also have programs, events, plans, systems, or a series of scheduled organized activities or procedures under which action may be taken towards a goal. Again, the state provides a list of some broad categories which could play into programs, and principals do also have the option to select an other and list specific programs that are going on in their schools. So you can see here's the breakdown of our schools as far as their trainings and programs that are specific to HIB. And I know that this has been asked in some of our other board meetings throughout the course of this year. This gives a listing of our overall total programs and trainings running in each of our buildings as well as district-wide. And as you can see in the comparison between 17-18 and 16-17, our numbers of trainings have gone up fairly significantly, and our number of programs have increased slightly from last year. This is for the period between September 1st and December 31st, and I know from speaking to our principals, as well as some items that have been done at the district level, that we've implemented some additional trainings and programs going forward into the second reporting period, which we'll see later this summer. And not as long as some of our other presentations tonight, but that is our student safety data system reports for the 17-18 reporting period 1. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Glock-Malloy?
I just have one question, Eric. When you're saying the numbers of the removals went up because they're reported this year for the first time, does that mean from the entire school, or could that mean removal from class? You're misbehaving and we're taking out a particular class?
That is defined as a removal from the regular academic program of the day. So for our code of conduct, that would be either an out-of-school or an in-school suspension.
Should we differentiate that? Is there a difference? I know there's a difference, but should we differentiate that in the reports?
When the principals plug the individual data into the system, they're only given a limited set of options. So there are some specific details that are given when they plug in each incident, which would differentiate between an out-of-school and an in-school suspension, certain details on what the underlying cause of the removal was. But on the overall global report, there's no differentiation between them.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Glockmole? All right, thank you very much. All right, we will continue with our regularly scheduled agenda. So moving on to correspondence, we have the monthly technology and maintenance reports, and I'll entertain a motion for approval of minutes.
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, do I have a second?
Second.
By, sorry, who seconded? Mr. Oh, I didn't see you move. Mr. Callahan. Ms. Hill, you have some corrections to the minutes.
I do. On pages 19 and page 12, for governance number 6, it was noted that that item did not pass. However, after discussing with our attorney, that motion only needed 4 yes votes, which the board had. So that did pass, and that is reflected, that would be reflected in these minutes. As well, in the executive session minute, under matters falling under attorney-client privilege regarding the trademark, the very last sentence should say, most of the board, not just the board.
Not just what?
Not just the board,
Oh.
most of the board.
Okay.
And that would be it.
All right. Any other questions on the minutes? All right, hearing none, roll call on the minutes.
Mr. Balca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bashada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Sayak?
Yes. Okay, district highlights.
Before you go on to highlights, I have a minutes question, just a general one. I went on the website and I was looking up minutes, somebody had asked a question, and one of the words said it's on one of the attachments, but the attachments aren't there in the minutes. Like when, sometimes we have those lines that say on attachment D, attachment C, but there was no attachments following the minutes. Is that something, I know I had talked about this once before, and I thought we were including the attachments on
They're
our
on the
minutes.
website, they just might not be under the minutes because they're with the board agenda.
They're under the
items.
agenda section,
Right, so we just left them on
Right, but
there.
what happens, and where does the addendum go?
under the agenda section.
So, but the addendum was in the minutes when I looked, but not, like,
Well,
the
the
addendum's
individual-
incorporated in the minutes, so why wouldn't the attachments? Isn't that the official record of the
It
meeting?
is, and I mean, my official record also I have all of the attachments in my office for that, but they're also on the website, we just didn't post them in 2 different places, we left them with the agenda attachments. The portions that are on the addendum, though, they have to be written into the minutes, just like everything on the regular agenda.
Okay, so if the attachment was part of the addendum, where would that be?
Still under the agenda section.
In the agenda section? Is there a way that we could note that somehow on the website, so if people wanted to see it, that all attachments are under agendas and not on the
Yeah,
minutes? Like, I wouldn't even think to look under the agenda, I just would automatically go to the minutes if I was to
Yeah,
look
if
up
we put
something.
a notation that all attachments are located here, and maybe a link to that section.
That would just, if somebody wanted to look for something, it was hard to find.
Is there any objection from the board to do that? Okay, hearing none, you'll adjust the website with that comment. District highlights, Mr. Esposito.
Okay. We have 3 highlights to read out today, but 2 of the 3 we spoke about earlier today. One was our top 10 students, and the other was Middlesex County School Board's Students of the Year. So congratulations again to all, but I will skip those 2, and I will go to the one that we did not speak about. So on March 23rd, Sayreville High School's French Honor Society attended the 2018 National French Day Film Festival at Montclair State University. Mrs. Sarah Sullivan, French teacher, and her classes had a film entered in this festival entitled Max and France. We are proud to announce that it received the Positive Message Honorable Mention Award and was ranked as one of the top 5 films in the state. We would like to commend Mrs. Sullivan and her French students for their wonderful accomplishments, and we are very, very proud of them. That's all I got today.
Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations to those mentioned. Dr. Labby, we'll turn it over to you for your superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Syak. If I could begin with, as always, Vision 2030 Finance and Infrastructure. Of the most important items on there, number 11, approval of a resolution naming Spiesel Architectural Group as the board architect of record for the period of April 18th through June 30th, 2019, and you can find that on page 3. Numbers 16 through 18, we're asking you to approve the very generous donations made by members of our community, including Princeton University Surplus Equipment Program, the Wilson PTO, as well as contributions received by DonorsChoose.org from various individual organizations, and you can find that on page 4. And finally, number 30, approval to accept the Zonar and National Association for Pupil Transportation 2018 Dawn Carnahan Memorial Grant in the amount of $8,500 to be used for the purchase of electronic verified inspection reporting system for district school buses, and that can be found in the addendum. And as you know, we went ahead and included various items with regard to technology in our budget so that we could actually get this grant as well. So any questions on Vision 2030 Finance and Infrastructure?
Number 11, was there an RFP on that architect change?
We did an RFQ, yes.
You did an RFQ?
Yeah.
Okay,
Any more questions, comments? Seeing none. Student achievement, numbers 1 and 2, we're asking you to approve resolutions to recognize our top 10 students at Sayreville War Memorial High School, as well as the MCAS, the Middlesex County School Boards Association student recognition recipients. You can find those resolutions on pages 11 and 12. And numbers 3 through 6, we're asking you to approve co-curricular activities, most particularly the change in date for the Sayreville Middle School 8th grade moving up ceremony. That is now June 21st, in accordance with our new calendar change, as well as a new date for the high school graduation, which is now Friday, June 22nd. And because I did not receive much feedback, if any at all, with regard to changing the time to an earlier time, in fact, the only feedback I did receive was people, parents and some staff members were a little bit upset because of that time change to an earlier time. So as of right now, we're going to keep the time the same at 6 p.m. Any questions on any of the items on student achievement?
If we could just advance the slides, because we're still on finance and
sorry,
infrastructure. I wasn't sure if that was you. Oh, okay. I'm motioning to Mr. Hockman, but apparently it's you.
It could be both of us.
Oh, okay. Any questions
Any questions on student achievement?
Student achievement. Okay, next.
Bringing your attention now to Vision 2030 student governance, we're at number 1 and only. We're asking to approve the second and final reading of the Board of Education Policy 5131, which is the Student Code of Conduct. As you know, you read it for the first time during the March 17th Board of Education meeting, March 20th Board of Education meeting, and now we're asking you to approve it for a second and final reading. Any questions on that or, and I believe, the HIB report?
I have a couple questions on the code of conduct. If the color is purple, or seems purple, does that mean that it's all brand new? And it just was never in there before?
Yes, if it's underlined in a color, it's new language.
Okay, so.
It's a
strike through.
If it's
All right,
strike
yeah.
through,
Well,
it's
it's just that there's some are orange, some are red, some are purple.
We just had different people editing it.
Oh, all right, so I wasn't sure if the colors meant anything. So if you go to, there's no pages. There's a section here with bus conduct violation, and it's in purple. So that means it was new. Did we not have a bus violation
We did not
policy
have.
before of any sorts?
We did not have specific items in our code of conduct for bus violations. We had a general reg on transportation, but nothing with regard to specific penalties. And our principals indicated that we should have them because they've been having some challenges on the buses.
Okay, so what, like, is there a place where, like, there's, like, say, what the definitions are? Like, say, what is a bus conduct violation? Like, what would constitute that? Like, I see, it says, like, what would happen if there was a violation, but it doesn't
Basically,
tell you what they
a
are.
student breaking the rules of the bus. That could consist of anything from not putting your seatbelt on.
So do we have that somewhere else?
Yes, there are
These rules,
codes
where are
of
they?
yes, there are rules for every bus. There are codes of conduct for every bus. The kids know the code of conduct on each bus.
Okay, so when there's a violation, that's a violation of the code of conduct?
Of the bus conduct, yeah,
Of the
for the bus,
So-
exactly. And
so
that
we-
can range from not wearing a seatbelt,
Foul language.
foul
not
language,
following the
hitting a
driver's
child, not
direction.
following the direction of the bus driver, so forth.
Okay, so all of them, these violations are equal. So the first incident you get, so whatever you do, it's your first incident, you get that
Correct.
punishment?
Correct.
All right. Okay. And I noticed some where they say, you know, it has to go before the board, like after certain instances. Are there any new ones to that, or are they all the same? Like it said, like after third incident of this particular thing, then it goes for a board hearing. Are there any changes in those?
Well, there are a couple of new violations that would require that.
So-
They would be, underlined and in color. You would see them in the.
Yeah, I didn't see like if that was seems to me that there's been an increase of board hearings with the student discipline, so I didn't know if it was is there been a change in something we're doing, or has there just been?
Well,
Or-
this student code of conduct, because there are some new violations that are listed here. But since this is not really approved yet, that wouldn't factor into this.
So would there be an expectation that that's going to increase more?
I don't believe so. I think every year is a little bit different. But I do think that, it's very important that our students and their parents understand that there are very, very serious consequences to very serious infractions to the code of conduct, mostly involving a violent nature.
Okay, so when the hearings go before the board, is that something that's all a Sayreville determined policy, or is there some other governing thing that's sending them this way? Do we determine that?
We have specific policy. For instance, our substance abuse policy is very different than many other school districts.
Okay, but there's nothing beyond our school district, like there's no laws or anything that says.
There
The
are,
only
there
one I
are,
can think of is assault on a teaching staff member may have a law requirement for a board hearing.
I'm not sure if it does, but we have a very strong policy with regard to that. I do know weapons. Weapons, there is a law to
Maybe
support
that's the one.
weapons. But I think that through the years, particularly since I've been here, this board and this administration has demonstrated, first and foremost, that the safety and well-being of our students is our highest priority. And therefore, students that engage in activity that puts themselves or other students at harm, those infractions are taken very seriously, and the consequences can be very serious, including an interim alternative placement outside of one of our schools.
So generally speaking, do you think that this changes in the code of conduct is making it more stringent than it has been?
I think the changes in this code of conduct, first of all, addressing the bus code of conduct. Previously, we'd have to match the behavior with what's in the code of conduct. Now, that being said, if children engage in fighting on the bus, they can face bus consequences as well as school consequences. Both consequences can be concurrent. But our principals felt that they needed a little bit more leverage in communicating how important it is that children behave themselves on those buses. And by adding what we've added to bus conduct, we believe that we're going to be able to effectively communicate to those students and their families that there is a particular code of conduct on that bus that needs to be followed. And if you don't, the privilege of riding that bus will, possibly be taken away from you.
Generally, I think it's about filling in the gaps in our code of conduct that principals have seen where they've had incidents but have not been able to readily just point to a provision in the code of conduct. For example, the sexual, contact one was one provision that we didn't have in there before.
And bias intimidation.
Right.
These are all guidelines or recommendations. What?
And-
Yeah, they're all school safety data recommendations.
That's the other piece of it.
Many of the code of conduct items that we added were items that were added as categories in the student safety data system this year, changes from the EVVRS system. So in order to keep our code of conduct aligned with what the state's looking for reporting, that was one of the major driving factors to adding a lot of these categories. And many of them are serious offenses.
Right,
that-
so the sexual contact and the sexual assault was not something that we had
driven by
before.
student safety data.
And it's important that we include these things now because that is going to be part of CUSAC. In fact, interestingly enough, Mr. Nasser actually shared with one of the officials at the Department of Education in Middlesex County our code of conduct. And they were so impressed with our code of conduct, they began referring other districts that are in CUSAC now. They've been referring them to our code of conduct so they could see how detailed and how thorough our code of conduct is.
Okay, so, the sexual contact one, there was trying to make a difference between sexual contact and sexual assault, and there's like a note in there between the two. I know there's no pages, so I don't know how to tell you to find it, but, it says that, the last sentence where it says about the ages, if sexual contact occurs with a victim less than 13 years old, blah, 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 then it should be sexual assault. But then on the next page, there's a definition of what sexual assault is, and they coincide. So when would it not be if it says it should be? Why isn't it, why is that not definitive?
The definition there is straight from the student safety data system, and basically it's denoting that there's a definition of sexual conduct within that guide for schools. So it's basically saying, here's your definition for sexual conduct, but if these age parameters come into place, it automatically bumps it up
Right.
to the sexual assault.
Right, so it should automatically, but this says should be. Why wouldn't it would be a sexual assault? What makes that, it's kind of making it a gray area. Is there something
Well,
that
'cause
makes it
they're-
gray?
I believe the word should is in there in the case there are mitigating circumstances.
Okay, so it's not definitive.
But
Like
it should be, so rather than shall, that would be a zero tolerance. That would be, and that's something that you have to be really careful about.
Okay, so this is not necessarily, is this a legal definition of sexual assault, or?
This is a guideline to help our administrators determine what violation a child commits. That's what our code of conduct is. Our code of conduct is a guideline that our administrators use, first and foremost, to identify the violation, and then B, to identify the appropriate consequence for the violation, so as to promote the fact that the child does not commit that act again.
All right. And the other one, the academic integrity, and I remember talking about this at the board level before, and this one is blue, so that means it's new too.
Yeah, that was the first cut of this, yes.
Okay, so, where was this if it wasn't in this policy? Because I remember us talking about this once before. Is there like a,
We adopted a policy
Yeah.
on academic integrity at the same time we initially proposed this coding for the penalties associated with it. So the policy on academic integrity defines what academic integrity is, defines what violations of integrity,
Okay.
academic integrity look like. This regulation, which is the same number as the policy, it delineates what the, discipline is associated with violations.
okay, so we never had the discipline delineated till now?
No, because what happened, these two policies, the policy and the reg were supposed to be adopted simultaneously together. And what happened was, Mr. Malloy came forward and said there's all these other things in the reg which also needed to be updated and added. So he's taken the time to go meet with the principals, get all those other additions, which you just spoke about, into the regulation, as well as the academic integrity.
Okay, and so when it says here, the pupil will have a reduction in grade credit, like first offense, how does that get determined? Is that something the teacher would recommend?
That's the
If it was-
administrator. The administrator would make that decision, yeah.
The administrator would do that?
Yep.
That's how it would work?
Yep. And interestingly enough, this is, the governance committee took a look at this policy in light of an ed council meeting that we had,
Correct.
in which our teachers expressed serious concern with regard to students, demonstrating a lack of academic integrity. And they felt that we really needed to strengthen that policy in order to communicate to our students that this is unacceptable behavior that will have serious consequences, in the hopes that, they won't commit that.
So if a teacher, say, catches, and it's a first offense, and they want to have a reduction in the grade, but the principal can overrule that or make the final decision. Like, I guess only from a parent's perspective, if a parent had an issue, where would they go?
Any violation in the code of conduct is brought to the administrator's attention. And our administrators work very hard with our teachers, our faculty, to understand the situation, mitigating circumstances involved in them, and to determine the most appropriate consequence that will shape the behavior and positively reinforce the fact that the child does not commit that infraction again. So, in this particular case, the teacher would bring it to the attention of the administrator. The administrator would have a discussion with the teacher and address it accordingly.
Okay, so a teacher wouldn't unilaterally do it?
No.
Thanks.
Any other questions on governance? Hearing none, Dr. Labby, back to you.
If I can bring your attention now to Vision 2030 personnel. We have, again, one of those bittersweet moments which we tend to do in the spring. We have two beloved nurses who have asked you to accept their retirements. Our first is Edith Braun. She's our beloved school nurse at the Eisenhower Elementary School. Edith Braun, known to most as Edie, served as a substitute nurse in the Sayreville School District for 6 years before her hire at the Eisenhower Elementary School in April of 1994 under the supervision of Principal Robert Decker. Edie has served under a total of 5 different principals during her tenure at the Eisenhower Elementary School. Mrs. Braun has compassionately and professionally taken care of hundreds of students over the past 14 years and earned the utmost respect from the parents each year who sent their children to school, knowing they were in excellent hands should illness or injury occur during school hours. When not tending to students and staff during her busy day, Edie also managed to find time to coordinate and raise funds for the American Heart Association and local and county food banks. In fact, she organized and ran the Jump Rope for Heart with the students and collected Go Red for Women as well. During the holidays, it was Edie who organized and collected gifts and gift cards for families less fortunate than others. It is no wonder that Edie was the first nurse in the district to receive the Teacher of the Year award. Edie Braun has spent the last 24 years caring for and establishing a safe haven for students and staff at the Eisenhower Elementary School who were under the weather, needed medication for every situation that falls under the health category, and for those just in need of some tender loving care. Mrs. Braun's departure leaves a huge space in the Eisenhower family, but it gives us joy knowing that she can now enjoy her retirement years with her friends and her family. We will forever be grateful for her dedication and compassion. And on behalf of the administration and the Board of Education, we can't thank Mrs. Braun enough for the incredible service that she's provided, both our students and staff, and we wish her nothing but the very best in her retirement. We also are going to say goodbye to Betty Ann Berner. She's a registered nurse at the Sayreville Middle School. Today, the Sayreville Board of Education would like to recognize the retirement of Mrs. Betty Ann Berner, middle school registered nurse. She decided to retire after 17 years of service to the students of Sayreville. Mrs. Berner is looking forward to spending more time with her family, especially her husband and 2 daughters. She has been a very dedicated and committed nurse for many years, and as with Mrs. Braun, has taken very, very good care of our students and our staff at the Sayreville Middle School. And likewise, on behalf of the administration and Board of Education, we wish her nothing but the very best in her retirement, and we thank her very much for her service to our district and our students. I'd also like to bring your attention to numbers 12 and 13, as well as number 22. You can find 12 and 13 on pages 17 and 18, and number 22 on the addendum. We're asking you to approve new certificated and non-certificated staff. And then finally, Mr. Nasser is at it again. We'll have our 3rd and final season of our Unified Sports. If you didn't have a chance to attend the Unified March Madness basketball tournament, it was another resounding success thanks to Mr. Nasser's administrative team and all the amazing coaches and advisors that participated in making it such a memorable moment for our students. We're asking you now to approve the summer Special Olympic Unified Sports Program. This summer, as it was last summer, it will be track and field, and we have the appointments there. You can find them on the addendum. Are there any questions on any of the items listed under 2030 personnel?
I have a question. Page 16, number 7, there's no step listed. Can you, most of them, they all have steps. Can you just tell me what the step is?
Number 16?
Page 16, number 7.
Page 16.
Deborah Metz, that was the sidebar because of the contract anomaly?
I believe that's a step 5. If I remember
I
correctly.
think you're right as well.
Step 5.
Step 5. Any other questions on personnel?
Mr. Sire.
Mr. Bashada?
Dr. Labby, on the addendum on page 5, approval of coaches. This is where we're going to approve the coaches and the stipends that they get to do, am I correct?
No, this is in light of the fact that we have a new contract. This is approving the actual changes in those stipends.
Okay, the question comes under the first one here. Football, you have a head football coach. You're supposed to have an assistant football coach, and then you have, it's not listed here, you follow me?
I can tell you why it's not listed. Those amounts didn't change.
I'm sorry?
Those amounts didn't change for those
They didn't
individuals.
change?
No.
And,
I think there needs to be a sidebar for that, so we left them off the list because there's not going to be a
okay,
change.
so we're going to have an assistant football coach?
Yes, and the first,
and
and the
the
freshman.
And the
coach.
assistant coach, first assistant, stays the same, that's gonna,
Right, and it's because of the percentages within the contract, they had somehow along the way kind of got misaligned, so this would correct it.
okay, and then we're going to approve these coaches with these salaries at another day, I mean, for the positions.
No, when we go ahead, you mean talking about for 18, 19?
Right.
Yeah, we'll do that at a later date. This is the
It's
17,
just the salaries.
retroactive 17,
Okay.
18 salary adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on personnel? On behalf of the board, I'd also like to congratulate Mrs. Braun and Mrs. Werner on their retirement. Being a school nurse certainly is not an easy job. Not only are you coughed on every single day and sneezed at every single day, but you also hold a lot of liability and a lot of concern for the students' welfare in your hands. And I know, in particular, Mrs. Braun has been with us for 24 years, which is a very long time, and basically a lifetime commitment to several students. So I want to congratulate and thank both of those individuals for caring for our 6 students. Hearing no other discussion on the superintendent's report, I'll open it up to public for any item on the agenda. If you wish to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Hearing none, we'll close public, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's report.
So moved.
By Mr. Walsh, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mrs. Bloom. Any comments on the superintendent's report? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Hill, please.
Mr. Balco?
Okay, I'm going to vote no on A, number 11, page 3.
Is that it?
Now, I talked to the attorney before, I have to stand on a bunch, so get ready.
Okay.
D number 4, D number 7, D number 8, D number 25, D number 26, D number 31, 32, and 33.
And those are all abstained.
They're all abstains to SEA.
Any other items?
No other items.
Mrs. Backo?
I'm going to be voting no on page 3, number 11. And yes to the rest.
Can I just, what is with the architect? Is there a problem with this architect that I'm not aware of?
Well, we met with him down in Atlantic City, and he just seemed very non-interested in our district at all. And we brought some information, that's back when we had the Buildings and Grounds Committee too, and we brought some information back for Tom. And I didn't know there was an RFP until today, so.
I was thinking, we spoke to him, I was not impressed with them, so.
Mr. Bashada?
I'll be voting yes, and I'm glad we got Spiesel as our architect. Speaking to other BAs over the years, they came highly recommended to me. I'm glad we've done away with going up north. I wasn't satisfied, as everyone is aware of, the group that we have had prior. I think Spiesel is going to do an excellent job for the district.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes. Okay, that concludes the superintendent's report. We'll move on to our committee reports. We'll start off with finance and infrastructure, and we can deal with the budget as well as part of that, since you dealt with the budget.
Okay. I will do the quick overview of what we did in finance, and I'll leave the healthcare portion to Mrs. Batko. Okay, so what we did is, obviously, you see from Dr. Labby's report, Erin narrowed the initial field of possible firms of architects to 10. From that number, we asked her to shave it down to the top 3, and those 3 were interviewed pretty extensively at one of our finance meetings, and Spiesel shined amongst all of them, and they were very impressive. And if the board, obviously the board proved, I guess, by Dr. Labby's report, we'll move forward with them next year. And they're going to have a lot of work to do, as we'll speak to in a moment. One other topic was the football field. Obviously, everyone knows that we're redoing the field. And the original budgeted amount was about, I believe, around $575,000. I mean, I'm rounding here. And we've had estimates now, so in the area of about $375,000. So we have, obviously, we're saving that $200,000, and Ms. Badami had mentioned to us that there's some real damage done to our track, and it needs to be fixed. And while we're going to get an estimate on that damage, we don't think the $200,000 is going to cover it. So the plan is, we're going to find out if we can get away with fixing it. If we can't, and we have to redo it, we'll take that $200,000, put it aside, and then fix that another year, possibly next year. And one other thing we discussed, and I guess we should discuss it here, was currently the color of our turf, green in the middle, obviously, and we have gray in the end zones with blue letters, and Ms. Badami had suggested that we put a Sayreville Bomber blue in the end zone with gray letters, and I believe white outline on the letters, so it bolds out and sticks out. I'm not sure if you guys, I'd like to know your opinion on that, if you guys want to go forward with that, or if you want to keep it the same. Any comments on that, or any issues?
Is there a big cost difference, or?
I'm sure there's a cost difference for the outline. I'm sure it's negligible. Yeah, I don't, the colors, no.
Why do we want to change the color?
She thinks it'll stand out more.
I think
Oh, so it's all cosmetic?
That's all.
It's just for cosmetics?
And I could see that popping from what you're describing.
Sure.
The blue with the white with the, yeah.
You don't notice it till we took an aerial view. Erin showed us an aerial view, and it is kind of blasé in a way. So, okay, so.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Absolutely.
There's also in the middle of the field, the bomber logo with the S. The other thing Ms. Badami suggested was doing a white outline around the blue S, because it gets a little muddled with the gray bomber behind it. That was the only other change. And to maybe make the football outlines a little bit wider, so they're a little bit more clear and definitive.
Right.
Mr. Esposito, I would recommend that $200,000 that you were talking about as savings, to put that to the side, because once they open up that turf,
It could be.
Kevin, Mr. Sack, you're well aware of what we went through with the reconstruction of that field, of sinkholes, and I forgot how many tandem loads of stone that we had to dump in there.
Really?
And,
Okay.
it's just something
Okay.
as a reserve in case Pandora's box is
Yeah.
opened up.
Absolutely, good idea. Yeah, that money, we'll keep it just in case. Absolutely, thank you for that.
And
That's
by
good
the
to
way,
know.
the track many
Good to know
years
history.
ago, the minimum that they were talking about for redoing the track was, if I'm correct, it was around $400,000.
The entire track.
And I know that's had to gone up. We had Band-Aided it several times. I don't know what the cost of Band-Aiding it would to get through this upcoming season, and possibly the fall and spring of next year, you're going to propose having it replaced. But that's just a guesstimate, and you're going to have architectural fees and engineering fees also thrown
right.
on top of all this.
Yeah, no, good points. And we'll bring to the board, obviously, we're going to get an estimate on how to fix it or to replace it, and we'll let you, all of us will decide, what's the prudent. decision.
And for the benefit of the public, I know we've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. The reason we're replacing that field is that field has an estimated useful life of about 10 years. I believe we're on year 12. But it's not so much the number of years. That field every single year has to have an impact test to determine what the impact is to a student who, falls on the field or is tackled on the field. If that field does not pass the impact test, we're shut down immediately. So that's the main reason that we're looking at replacing the field, given its age.
Do we know when that test is? I mean, would it be in danger one year of not having a football season?
I'm just gonna, in May.
It's done in May. It's cutting it really close.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And one other item, we've talked about this
I
before.
have a question
Oh,
on the
sure.
track, or you're done, but I don't want you to move on. Can you find out, I know we've Band-Aided that track so much before we make a decision on whether we want to Band-Aid again, how much we've actually spent over the years on these Band-Aids?
Yeah. Yeah, I can work on that.
And lastly, from me, we've talked about the referendum that we're looking to put out there. We're not quite sure yet whether it's going to be in April of 19 or November of 19. We have some homework to do on that and some decisions to make, and obviously we'll bring that to your attention as well. What was my thought on that? Sorry for bringing that up. That's it. I'm sorry, that was it. So we're making some decisions on that. My point was, we're going to be asking you in the next couple of weeks to please give us what we talked about, your wish list. I think, Mr. Bashada, you brought that up, that we should all be involved, and we all should be involved in that decision. So we want to know, what you'd like to see done in the district as far as what you think we need for improvements. So if you could do that, we'd really appreciate that.
Is that for buildings and grounds, you mean? Or just for anything financial
Well,
you're looking for?
No, it's more for, the biggest number is going to be buildings and grounds. So yes. And some good news, it's not a lot of cash, but 3 businesses are interested in advertising on our district website. So that brings in some revenue and, hopefully a lot more to come. They just started. Did I miss anything?
No, and there's actually, I think they have interest from 4 more, companies.
4 additional?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
great.
they don't have the finished artwork yet, but that's.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Budget.
Did you want to go over the budget? Do you want to just give us the highlights on that, just because you,
Sure,
I think
on
we wanna-
which portion, on the prescription analysis?
well, I thought Mrs. Bacco would do that, but.
All right, so you want to take the Health Benefits Committee
Yeah.
report
There,
first, and then we'll circle
segue.
back on the
Yeah,
budget?
let's do that.
Okay. Mrs. Bacco, Health Benefits.
Okay, we had a Health Benefits Committee meeting. It was with the board, the administration, and all the union representatives. So, good news and bad news. The bad news is the medical is estimated at a 10% increase for next year, and the broker doesn't think it's going to go any lower than that. So, that number was not something we really wanted to hear. The vision is going to stay the same. The prescription drugs is going to be a 5% decrease, and the dental, since we're going self-insured, that's going to be a 2% decrease for next year. However, most of the meeting was, if you have your prescription analysis sheet here, most of the meeting, we talked about, since we went self-insured for prescriptions this year. And last year, we had put in a 15% decrease in premiums over the previous year, going self-insured, and it turns out that we actually had come in quite a bit lower even after that 15%. So after discussion, and if you could look at this and you can see that, most of the months we have collected more than we paid out. So it is the request, I can tell you, the request of the union was that the money, we had gotten an email, and the request was to lower the premiums and refund some of the money. Well, it was refund all of the money and lower the premiums. So I guess the decision has to be rendered here from the board, how much we want to lower the premiums, or do we want to reimburse the employees for their share that they've overpaid, or do we want to do both? Erin estimated that the employees pay 17%, and the board pays the rest. So we also received the first rebate check which was $88,000, which is actually more than the broker actually had even projected. He was looking at more like maybe $250,000 a year, maybe $60,000. So that one came in higher than we anticipated too. So everything is going better than we anticipated financially for the prescription plan. And we also did talk self-insured for medical, but the broker's not right. It wants to wait another year. He doesn't recommend us doing it this year. Doesn't think we have enough data to make it financially feasible. So we're pretty much stuck with the 10% based on his recommendation. So the thing that we need to talk about here is the over-collection of the prescription premiums and where we want to go with it.
So, can I tell you what the Finance Committee spoke about regarding that? So, we saw the numbers, we studied the numbers, and I have to tell you, what worried us a little bit was there's not much history to go on since we just started this. And we think it's fair that we give something back, obviously. So as a group, we decided that we thought 5%, I think it was 5%, right? Give back to the employees at this point in time was a
That's
fair
the
give
premium,
back.
not to be-
Reduction in the premium.
Reduction in premium, I apologize, a reduction in premium of 5% at this point. And, obviously, if
So
we
you
keep
want
this
to
up.
reduce the premiums 5% and give no reimbursement? That's what the Finance Committee unanimously agreed upon.
That's correct.
Okay.
Again, because we don't know what the next 6 months will bring, the next year will bring. It's just too new to give everything back at once. We're not saying, we don't want to hold anybody's money. We're just, we're just a little leery because there's not much to go on at this point.
And the danger too is, if we give back too much, then you're looking at the following year raising premiums.
And if you don't mind me jumping in, I think the greatest source of confusion was regarding the $340,000 startup, which is basically a security deposit, similar to a security deposit that someone would put on an apartment they were getting. You have to put a certain amount down. I believe it's actually 6 weeks.
It was there 6 weeks.
6 weeks of premiums you have to put down. It's not a reserve. It's a security deposit that you do not get back, you cannot use until you end the contract with the prescription provider. And I think that was causing the greatest amount of confusion, and I don't believe that it was articulated appropriately by our broker just what that $340,000 was. So if you look at the analysis that Erin provided you with, the problem that we have is a cash flow problem, because we had to front it $340,000. And then what you do from thereon is you're basically making up that $340,000 that you front in the beginning. So even if you were to include the 2 rebates, and by the way, we can't include all 4 rebates. You can only include the first 2 rebates here. We're not talking a huge amount, and the amount that we're talking about is 4.47%, which is, again, another reason why we feel 5% is the most appropriate decrease in that premium. But I think that caused the greatest amount of confusion, because I think people looked at that $340,000 as a reserve. It's not a reserve, nor is it a stopgap insurance policy. When you self-insure, you get stopgap insurance. You don't get that with prescription. So this is not that. It's a deposit that you're not getting back until you go ahead and you leave that prescription company. And I think that it needs to be treated as an actual. It's money you're not getting back until you change prescription providers. And I get news to you, when we go to another prescription provider, we're going to have to do the same thing. So I think that's what caused the greatest amount of confusion during that meeting.
I don't know that there was so much confusion. Even though it's a cash flow thing, that's still money that we own. It's not, it still belongs to the board. It's still our money. It's just out there as a security.
If you look
deposit.
at the chart here, Mrs. Bacco, in February, we were still in deficit.
That's what I was just going to ask. The stuff in yellow
So
was
in
estimated,
March,
right?
finally,
Because-
we're finally out of deficit in March.
Right, but that 340 was actually, well, we'll talk about that in the budget process, but that was funded out of last year, not out of the next year budget.
No,
It was funded out of the current year budget, correct?
Right.
So it's not something that we're going to have to incur the expense
Right.
again.
Right.
But we also don't have the funds available to pay our claims. which is the biggest concern. So the $121,000 that I'm estimating we'll have, and that's if we get the rebate in June instead of July, that amount is 4.47%. So if we do a 5% reduction, that's a little over $130,000 that we'd be giving back in a premium reduction. So we'd be giving back all of that and then some in a premium reduction.
And the other part that I keep hearing rumblings about, and I'm not sure where this got started or where it came from, but to the best of my knowledge, there's no plans on this board's part or the administration's part to use this money for anything other than prescription. We're not looking to take, none of this money is going to provide relief in this year's budget. And again, I heard that flying around that for some reason we want to take money out of here and use it to offset the budget. That's not my understanding. I don't know if anybody else around the table has any other information, but that was never the intent.
No, I didn't hear that either, so.
Okay, I
didn't
just
hear
want to make sure that
I
that
didn't-
piece
I
is
didn't
clear,
hear
because
that anybody
I
said
had heard
that.
that concern that there was some desire to move money back, and that was never the plan with this.
Well, nobody said that at the meeting. I don't think anybody in that room was worried, had that concern. I don't know where you heard it, but
Okay.
it wasn't from anyone
Good.
at the healthcare meeting, and I don't think that was a concern. But I think even here, if you want to talk about like, all right, the 340 went out, but those rebates, even though they're not realized, they also are for this year. So you have to look at it from the perspective that they were earned this year. So they do go towards this year's premiums, even though you don't have the cash flow.
That's correct, but again, we don't have the cash flow, so we don't get them until 6 months after that time period has ended.
Right,
So
but then-
that is a cash flow problem if our claims exceed the premium that we're collecting.
And we do have some pretty expensive medications that we're paying for.
I personally think the 5% is too low.
Next year, we're going to have 4 rebates though, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
We'll have 4, maybe 5 if the June one comes in July, but that you wouldn't count that.
Well, right, so that would be 4 or 5.
And you can look at Aaron's analysis on the back page of what we provided you. And that incorporates the 4 rebates.
Can I ask I didn't ask this the other night, what happens, or what's the difference between getting it in June and getting it in July for our members and for us?
It's not really a difference for that. At that point, I would record it as a receivable. It would just be the cash that we have available in that fund as of July 1st.
Okay.
Do you record, if we got the 2, would you record the other 2 as a receivable?
I'm going to have to talk to our auditors about it, but I believe I would record it as a receivable. But again, it would just not be on the cash side.
Right, but it would be on a receivable side.
I think that would be the appropriate way to do it, yeah. I'm not going to have the dollar amount, though, so it would only be an estimate.
An estimate, right, but that would make sense.
Yeah.
Let's just, exploring different options here. Let's assume we do the 5% increase effective July 1.
Decrease.
I'm sorry, decrease, very important, it's a decrease. Effective July 1. If all of a sudden, everyone gets really, really healthy and we're running, $1 million surplus, can we reduce prescription rates again January 1?
Yeah, we did talk about that,
Yeah,
and
and
actually I
you
brought
could.
that up, but
You could do that. I mean, one of the things, and it's just that it creates a lot of work, but we can absolutely do it.
Payroll's
We
gonna
have to
love you.
recalculate every single person's contributions, but it can be done.
Okay. Because my thought process on this is that there's never a bad time to go to somebody and say you're going to pay less, but there's never a good time to go to somebody and say, well, you paid less last year, but now we need to give you an increase.
this is not based, see, I look at this as a one-year thing, and it was over-collected, okay? Next year's premium is projected by the broker on next year, okay? It's not relevant to the money collected here, so it'd be just like he gave us a premium this year, and if he gave us too low, we would have had to make it up, and that's just the way it works. But this was a lot of money that we actually over-collected. It wasn't just a few bucks here and there. It was considerable. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing, because it's better this way than the other way around. But when we're in this together, you have to look at it that the people putting in feel that, and this is the impression I get, they feel like they overpaid, and we should do something to try and correct that. And I understand that concept.
And we are.
Right.
We're decreasing
But
the rates by 5%.
Right, but what I hear is, and this is where my concern is, you want to not do too much because you're afraid the rates will go up the following year. Well, it's the same thing when we're not self-insured. The medical's going up 10%, and we don't have a choice, so we're stuck with that. So we should be using the same logic with the prescription. Just because we're self-insured, it shouldn't matter. You know, and if we weren't self-insured, all that money some insurance company would have sucked up.
So Erin, per paycheck, if we were to, let's say we were to go to 10%, how much additional money would the average teacher get roughly back in their paycheck?
It would
Each
work out
paycheck.
to about $6.
So we doubled it, they would get an additional $6 every.
Well, so it would be like $3 at 5%, $6.
5% is $3.
Oh, so they get an additional, so if, from 5% to 10%, they get an additional $3 a paycheck?
Right.
Okay.
It puts us more at risk.
Can
And
I
it puts
just
us more
say
at risk.
something? I don't think our concern was that the premium is going to go up next year. I think our concern was with giving all the money back, that God forbid someone gets a catastrophic illness. I mean, we discussed the fact that someone has, you know, a very large prescription bill. If you had another member who had, or two, that had these excessive prescription bills, that would be a problem for us. So with giving back the 5%, which is $120,000, which is not a little bit of money, and Erin did point out, that would be like $60 on a family policy, which if you break it down over the payments, comes out to $3 a paycheck. So it's not a significant amount, but we're making the effort to give that money back.
Right,
But
and
God
I
forbid
do
if we
understand
get-
that, and I think that was well communicated from the other side, that they realize it's not going to be an exorbitant amount of money, since they're only 17%. I think the issue more was, you know,
We're not gonna take that money and spend it somewhere else. That
no,
money will
and
be
I
kept.
don't think
So we-
anybody
we
thinks that,
promised
so
them.
I don't know where that's coming from. That was never discussed, it never came up.
Right.
I don't know where that's coming from. I haven't heard that from anyone. And if it
So-
is out there, nobody's communicated it to me, and I never thought the board was when we set this up. I never got that impression. I thought we were quite clear we were setting this up separate as a prescription, so I don't think that's really an issue. I mean, if it is an issue out there, I haven't heard it. I think it's more of a principle per se, like in other words, you know, you bought something and you overpaid, and
Could you use the microphone, please?
so, I think 5% is low based on the huge difference, but.
But can I just, I don't wanna ring the fire alarm here, but let's just say Mrs. Bloom, and we talked about, right, there's this one person who has this exorbitant bill. It's crazy, right? What if another person did have that bill or two, to Mrs. Bloom's point? Now we gotta raise their rates. You know what I mean? So that's really what the thinking was, you know, just to
Right, and
play
I
a little
understand
safe,
that,
you
and
know?
that did come up, but then I guess on the flip side, what happens if we don't, if those few high people drop out, then what do? Do you give the money back? Do you
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
start cutting
absolutely.
checks then?
I
when
can't
that
speak for
happens?
everyone,
And
but
and it's
our
not
plan is to
even-
do that, sure.
And it's not even raising the rates. If we get into that situation, we've got to take from the general fund budget.
In that current year,
From the
yeah.
taxpayers in
Right,
that
right,
current
right.
year and have the taxpayers subsidize it.
And
point.
if I may just add one thing, if, you know, for comparison's sake, if you look at our medical and the reason that we're getting the 10%, for a group of this size, they do it all based on experience, and we have very limited experience, and even the experience that we had with our medical, we had a couple months that were over 100% usage. Fully insured companies look for a loss ratio of 85%. So if you look at our prescription right now, granted, we have to factor in the 340 because the funds are gone, so we're looking at a 95% loss ratio. So when you're looking at our experience, for comparison's sake, we're following more similarly to what a fully insured company does, but we're having a much smaller loss ratio.
Right, but he also the broker did point out that those experience numbers were always inflated by the insurance companies.
And we did also talk, and we have to get this word out to all the employees, that the more they use CVS, the more they
Yes.
use, the more savings we're gonna get, right? I mean, you know this, I don't have to preach this to you guys on the healthcare committee.
Right.
The more savings they're gonna get next year.
Right, and there
You
is
know?
quite a bit of CVS usage going on. I mean, that is
Good.
happening. There are some other companies, we did request for the broker to have some sort of cost analysis. Just because someone's going to ShopRite doesn't mean that we're not getting a good deal. So we're looking for the balance between which of those are high. Like, they could guess, but they're gonna do an analysis to look at that, which is something we didn't have the privilege of having till before we went self-insured.
Got it.
So they are gonna work on that.
So, Ms. Hill, when do you need direction with regard to the premium adjustment from this board?
Well, the rates we would set, I would say probably in May, like the second meeting in May would be the very last time we could do it because we have open enrollment in June.
Okay. Is the board ready to make a decision on this now? Do we want to wait till May?
Well, my concern is to wait, June what do you want to have this open? The open enrollment was way too late last year, and I'd
That's
like to see that come up earlier.
I mean, we typically do a 30-day, that's standard really for anywhere is a 30-day open enrollment.
So if you want 30 days,
That would be a June 1st. So
June
we can
1st.
get the information out before then, but the actual open enrollment for people to turn the forms in and everything, that's set by the health insurance companies. It's 30 days.
Can we do an open enrollment of like May 15 to June 15? Because in education, June is a little bit of a rough month.
I can ask Mr. Colombo. I'm not sure because it's typically set by them. So even if we collect the paperwork and we don't enter it for them until June 1st, we could maybe do something like that. But then the employees would have the other deadline of May 15th to June 15th. It just wouldn't get entered into the medical, let's say, until June 1.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is the quicker we can make this decision, the better.
Yes.
Yes, because then we
right.
can move open enrollment up, and we do have a follow-up healthcare meeting at the end of the month, so.
All right, so the Finance Committee's recommendation is 5%?
Yeah, it is, and listen, I don't know, unless you guys can tell me that something might change in the healthcare meeting, I don't think anything's gonna really change other than that. So, I mean, I think we should vote, unless, again, you say, look, there's a possibility that we have information after your meeting that we don't have now. If that's a possibility,
No, these are the numbers. The numbers are them. I mean, well, I don't know, you might have one more month worth, but I don't think that's
Right.
gonna make a significant difference.
Probably
But
not.
I think the collections, I mean, I know, and I do realize, Erin's including this 340,000, but that's not, you have to look at what we brought in and what we paid out and the difference. And it's, you're talking $500,000. And then the rebates, if you take 80 grand and multiply that by 4, it's a lot of money, so I don't think 5% is gonna cut it. But that's my opinion.
but, well, I
I
don't wanna
think it
beat
should
a
be
dead horse,
higher.
but why, the 340, we have to agree that the 340, it's off the chart, off the table, even to discuss. That number, if we change plans next year, we'd have to take that 340 and move it. That's never gonna change. Okay, the only thing I can see, do we get interest on that money?
No.
They don't give us any interest on that?
No.
They make it all? Of course. Okay, so, I don't know what, I don't know if that's part of the discussion. I don't know if it should be, or could be.
So is it safe, and, because, obviously I'm trying to understand some of the numbers, that's treated almost like an escrow, like, so if
Right.
the rates did
Yeah.
go down,
Right.
Okay.
So
Like
Erin,
a security deposit. If you had an apartment and you had to
Understood,
give,
understood,
6
understood.
weeks ahead of time
Yeah,
or
in case it
whatever.
goes down early, right?
so Erin, right now you're projecting, well, let's just look at March. So right now, we are 55,000 to the good?
No,
No.
10,000.
That's next year.
I'm sorry,
10,000.
wrong side. Thank you. March, we're 10,000 to the good
Yeah,
So at
because of the rebate.
because of the rebate.
Right.
Now, at what point would we have to contribute to this fund? Would we have to go beyond the 340, or would we have to?
No, the 340 we can't touch.
Can't touch it. You
So
can't
it's
do it.
really once we make that final June payment for the premiums into this fund, if we go in the negative, then the board would have to make up that difference.
So it's done at the end of the year?
Kind of, only because I'm billing the board ahead of time, so, without the rebates, then we would still be in the negative right now, or without the one rebate that we did receive. So, because I'm billing a month to 2 months ahead of time, we have the money in there to pay the claims. But once I make the June payment, I can't make any other payments until we roll into the new year.
So on a cash basis, this account needs to be 0 or greater by the end of the year. And if it's not, we have to subsidize.
Correct,
And the 340 is not part of that cash basis.
correct.
Got it. That's the issue. And you said it, Dr. Labby, it's a cash flow issue. All right, so what do we want to do here?
Well, let me just say, a lot of smart people on this board, especially with numbers, and I respect, but if the public hasn't noticed, and I've said this before, we have a business administrator who I think is out of this world, qualified, and I have absolute full confidence in her. So, Erin, you think the 5% decrease in the premium is sustainable and good way to
I think
move?
it's a fair number. I think that really gives back the balance that we have in that account, in the premium, so I think it's a fair number.
So I'm okay with moving forward with that if that's something that the board wants to entertain today.
Do you need a formal motion on this, or just as direction suffice? What do you need from us?
I don't need a motion, I think just direction, and then when we set the rates is when we would have.
Okay, so John, you're a yes. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Mr. Walsh, you're a yes. Mrs. Bacco, you're a no?
I will go for any reduction, I just think 5 is too low. I mean, I'm not
You
going
want higher
to
than
vote
5.
no to
Right.
not reduce it.
But you want higher than
I
5.
want
And I wasn't trying to
something
frame you,
higher
but I
than
know.
5, yes. I
Mr.
think
Callahan?
5 is too low.
So I vote yes, but I think next year we'll reevaluate it, and if there's more money in there next year, we'll certainly reduce it next year.
That's the hope.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Mr. Esposito?
Yeah, 5 is sufficient.
I'm also good with the
My
5. Mr. Balca?
More than 5.
More than 5. Mrs. Bloom?
I think 5 is fair.
Mr. Bishada?
I'm not happy with 5. I think what we should do is wait till the 30th. Is that the meeting, Mrs. Batko? I think we should wait till that meeting. And I missed the 10th meeting because I had eye surgery. I'm not familiar with it. I know what Mrs. Rubio, she was there. I'd just like to see more information from the broker himself. You know, I would have questions for him myself, as I usually do. I would ask that we could hold off until we.
Can I just clarify something here? Because this is not a broker decision, okay? The broker is setting the rates for next year. That's his job. The broker's not going to tell you what to do with your money that you've over-collected. Like, you could sit there and you can ask him and put him on the spot, but this money that's over-collected, it's not really his decision to make. So I don't think if anybody wants the broker to make that decision, that's not going to happen. He set the rates at a 5% reduction for next year based on what he thinks is going to happen next year. This is just a reduction based on the collections. So, like, if you were at the meeting, the broker's going to tell you next year's rates. He gave you your 10% on medical, your 5% reduction on prescription, which your dental will be for next year. This is like past tense money. Like, so this sort of has to be what the board wants to do with the money. So I don't think you're going to get a better answer from the broker. So I just don't want you, I just don't want you to be thinking you're going to come off with that much better information, because I don't think he's going to give that to you. This is a cash issue, what the board wants to do with the money.
I'd like to see a greater reduction, to be very honest with you.
Mrs. Rubio?
I'd like to see a greater reduction as well. I think the folks in the room, all the different units that were represented, seem to be in favor as well. So judging from the committee, I would like to see a little greater. I would not vote no on 5, but I would like to see greater.
And I think the employees, well, at least their union representatives, realize that if something astronomical should happen, that the rates would go up. They understand that. So it's just more of a principle. They feel like they've overpaid, and they've sort of like,
Okay, I think the direction is 5-4 at 5%. Okay?
Can I ask a question of Erin? If we do the 5%, does that totally deplete that $120,000 that we have in the account?
So technically, yes, but then as the year goes on, it's not all at once, so it's not, right out the door. So that's where you see on the second page where you have the amounts in the negative for, each month. And that's, again, it's all trend, so we trend up. Whether or not that's gonna come to fruition, it could go well, but it could go worse. So it would happen gradually over the year, but then we would be getting the
rebate would be
in.
given back over the year.
Correct.
But if 5% is going to deplete that 120, I don't see how we could give back more, not knowing what's going to occur next year. I think we're safe with the 5. I think If we have a huge or a larger surplus next year, we can revisit it and then once again reduce the premium. But I think at this point, to deplete all the money in that account is kind of scary, I mean, for me.
Well, that's the plan. If we,
Yeah.
if we do well next year, we'll give them,
Right,
whatever we
absolutely.
can, obviously.
I think
Absolutely,
everybody's on
no
the same
doubt.
page.
Yeah.
Well, you have to
Wanna keep
realize you
that money.
started with nothing this year, because this was brand new. We didn't over-collect to create a fund. That wasn't the point of it.
But there's only 10,000 in the account
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, but it's,
Yeah,
it's-
there was
it's
nothing.
not a big
We
deal.
started
Yeah,
with
it's not
nothing,
a
with
lot of
zero.
money.
We
But
started with
again, if
negative.
we get a lot of claims, then it's gonna have to come from somewhere else. So while we can do something smart to keep that from happening, I think we should do that.
Your projections, was that 5% decrease or no?
That is a 5% decrease, and you'll
So-
notice that July and August are lower. And the reason is because a lot of times we have resignations, retirements,
Yeah.
things of that nature. So the premium that we're gonna collect is
So
gonna
with
be
the 5% decrease, you're projecting a 10% excess next year.
Right.
Okay.
And that's based, it's really solely on the rebates. So if you see the balance, the balance is 265, I'm projecting.
Yeah,
The rebates are
rebates are
258, so it's really entirely the rebates.
Okay, so you have your direction.
Just one other thing on the medical, please.
Yes.
Mrs. Batko brought up the fact of a 10% medical increase. The initial proposal that was given, if I'm correct, was 14.
Well, it was a cap at 14.
Right, but I mean, the cap was at what they had negotiated, but I mean, dropping it down 4 more points saves everyone some money.
He was pretty sure that it was gonna be 14, wasn't it, from what I understand?
That was a kind of
No, I
like an
think he sort of
agreement, am
always
I correct,
predicted
Mrs.
the 10.
Batko?
Oh, really? Yeah, okay. He was just
It was
playing it
kind of an
safe.
agreement because
the
we
cap.
got such a lower rate to start this year with.
Yeah.
But to come in at 10, where I think the state went higher than that.
Yeah.
I think is a savings to everyone involved in this.
Absolutely. Agree.
Yeah, but the 18-19 budget has a 14% increase budget?
That's what was budgeted, because that was the numbers that we had. And it just, I haven't gotten actually anything from Horizon with the official offer of 10% yet, so.
All right, so we're clear on that one. Now, with regard to the prescription, Mr. Esposito, do you want to talk about the reduction that we did make in the budget to bring the tax levy down as a result of the prescription?
Yeah, I do, because you know what?
Where we?
I'm not gonna do it justice, and I'm gonna miss something, and it's extremely important that we get this right.
Sure.
And I won't do it justice, I know I won't. So if you would.
Sure, so one of the things that the Finance Committee talked about was at the public hearing on May 1st, recommending adjusting the prescription amount in the budget to the negative 5%, but to also include a 5% reserve. So if, let's say, we do have excessive claims, there is money in the budget to cover those, but if it's not, if that doesn't happen, then that money just would go to excess surplus or anything like that. So that was their recommendation. The average assessment that we had originally predicted going up based on the 2% increase in the levy, the enrollment adjustment, and the health benefits waiver was at 2.99%. Making this change, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it brought it down to 2.76%.
That was the number. That's it.
So then the average impact goes from 120 down to 111?
Correct.
We didn't get that though, do we?
Did that? No, because
I did not
that
get
was just
that.
made last
Okay,
night.
that's
That was the latest adjustment to the budget. Anything else on the budget? And I'll open it up to any board members with concerns about the budget.
I think that covers it. I don't think we missed anything, right? That's it. That's all my notes. That's all I had in my notes. Yeah, that's good.
Board discussion on the budget.
I have a couple comments. Are you still maintaining the 2% cap?
No, we're at 2.7 because we're utilizing the health
No,
benefits.
the cap, reserve. See, according to.
He's talking about the surplus.
Oh, the surplus.
I'm
Oh.
sorry, yes, let me correct myself. The surplus, is that still a 2%?
It's slightly lower than 2%.
Slightly lower is what?
I don't have that number on me. If you give me a few minutes, I can come up with a number,
Well,
but
you see, the reason
wasn't
I ask
prepared
is
for that
because over
question.
the years prior, in order to meet the 2%, what we did sometimes is we took money out of the reserve and applied it to lower from, we'll say 2.77, is it right now, or 7.5?
276.
to
7.6.
to 2%. You know, because a lot of times that the surplus or reserve, whatever you want to call it, you know, it's never used, and the trade over a period of time, and I was doing this with other people, is that we took the money out of there to lower it. Has that been brought up as an issue?
We did take additional funds out of the surplus that was in there. So that was done in the finance committee.
Yeah, but what
Last
type-
night?
what kind of money?
No, just in general. So what we've been doing, what I've been doing since I got here is reducing the amount of fund balance we're using to balance the budget by $500,000 every year because we have a depleting fund balance. So this way we can gradually reduce it instead of running into a deficit in 1 year by continuing to budget the same amount in fund balance. So what we budgeted in fund balance was $1,385,000. Last year, we budgeted $1,885,000. The year before, $2,385,000.
So you're below, right now, you're at 1.3, you said?
Yes.
And that's a little under 2%, you said?
No, that's what we budgeted in fund balance.
In
to
fund
be
balance,
used
but
to
you could
balance
go
the
into
budget.
that to lower down to 2% at the cap, am I correct?
Technically, yes, you could. That would not be my recommendation.
Well, we've done it before, and I know we've never had a problem with it. That's the reason I ask.
What would it bring it down to, again?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me, what to bring what down to what.
The general fund balance.
You want me to figure out what the balance would be in fund balance if we only did a 2% tax levy increase?
That's your
Is that
question,
what
right, Tom?
question is?
Right. You don't have to, I don't think you want it
legitimately,
now.
I would
Maybe
need
you
at
do
least
want
like
it now.
10 minutes to get all
Yeah,
that
no, 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 no.
together, so.
Okay. I don't know if you want
I wasn't
Yeah,
prepared
I mean,
for that
you know,
question,
get it later.
so.
See, I'll be very honest with you. I want to see a 2%. That's what the law is. I'd like to see that, okay? We've gotten a reduction of 4% supposedly in healthcare. I mean, is there's any way to minimize, because what's happening is the borough is going almost 4% with their increase, and we don't know what the county's going to hit us with, you know, so one of the issues that before we were kind of saved with this 2% cap is that, Kevin, and you know this as a matter of fact, how many budgets were defeated? Because to be perfectly honest with you, the taxpayers said, no, we can't afford it. And I don't want to put a bigger burden because the borough's throwing 4% at them. I don't want to throw 3% more on top of it, and then the county throws 3% more. That's 10%. You know, I know I've heard, you know, we're $6 million under the tax levy and all that, but, you know, somebody pays for it, and that's, I don't want Sayreville to wind up, you know, as an example, a pilot. I'll give you the pilot down in Morgan. That's $196,000 they collect. The town collects. 5% of that goes to the county, and the school district gets absolutely nothing. They're putting another pilot on Journey Mill Road, a cogeneration plant, which they claim that they make money on because of the fact that they use the water. But it does no benefit to the taxpayers of this town. I've heard just recently that ShopRite is going for a pilot program of what they're constructing down there. Okay, this is another thing that's going on. Somehow, I would like to see the burden reduced to the cap of 2%.
And Mr. Bashada, I agree with you. The challenge that we have with this particular budget, and it isn't even about adequacy, it's about the fact that we're still looking at right now, the budget compass has us at a $2.6 million deficit for next year in terms of our budget.
Let me say this here.
2 years, yeah, 2019-20.
Yeah, Aaron had originally predicted 2 years down the road it would be $3 million.
Correct, and we got an additional million, 1.2 or so.
We got 996 last year. You got a million, I think 16,000 this year.
Right.
Okay. Now, last year also we got extraordinary aid also on top of extraordinary aid. Are we projecting extraordinary aid on top of extraordinary aid for this year also? So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that in 2 years we've gotten to over $2 million.
We've only got 1 year. Next year is the year in which we're projecting this deficit. We've only got 1 year to go.
What are you referencing with regard to extraordinary aid? You talking about special education extraordinary aid?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You mentioned extraordinary aid. What are you referencing? What do you mean?
Last year, we had extraordinary aid And then
Do you mean special
I
education?
think he means,
extraordinary aid?
I think he means equalization
Equalization aid, is that what you mean?
Well, what?
It was the
I thought it was-
equalization aid that brought in the
Maybe,
additional
Yes.
revenue.
Extraordinary aid is something different.
Right, but I think the extraordinary aid went up last year.
The extraordinary aid, I believe, stayed the same.
For next year, the extraordinary,
It's the same.
yeah.
From 16-17 to 17-18, it went up 200,000, and then it stayed the same going into 18-19.
Which is next year. Are we
Which is
calling
next year.
18-19 next year?
18-19 is next year, yes.
Right, so it went up last year.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Anthony, how much of that .76 is, did you take the healthcare down to the 10%?
We didn't do that yet, right? Because we're not quite sure if it's going.
I have
know it's
nothing
10?
in
The
my-
healthcare is
Right,
still at
yeah.
14%.
So
no,
this
we have
includes a
healthcare.
14% increase?
Correct.
And did you reduce the, without the 5% we talked about tonight, so you also didn't decrease the prescription 5%, you still have a plus 5%?
No, that's the number that I noted with the 2.76% increase on the average assessed home. That is a 5% reduction in the prescription, but also adding in a 5% reserve. So it effectively makes it a zero, so that the board has funds available to pay if we do have excessive claims.
I thought we were using this money that we didn't want to increase above 5% in case we had excessive claims. So now you want another 5% in the budget.
That is what we discussed, yeah.
So in dollars, how much of this .76 is healthcare?
You're gonna have to give me a few minutes, I don't have that offhand.
Okay, can I just throw out a figure here that Erin gave us? The original assessment, which was at 2.99, the tax assessment was $120.49. By taking it down, what was the percentage that we dropped it, Erin?
I'm sorry, I was trying.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, no, can
The
you?
2.99.
5%.
2.76.
It went to
Okay,
111.
2.76, that took $9 off of the money. I'm sorry, I'm a taxpayer. If you're gonna give me back $9, keep the $9. It doesn't mean anything to me, but it majorly impacts the budget. $9 to me is nothing. I don't think anybody on this table would argue that.
But the 2.99 that you're using includes the debt service.
Yes.
The number to compare to the 2% cap is the 3.39, the tax levy. So let's rephrase the question. The 2.76, does that include the debt service?
Yes,
What is the number equivalent to the 3.39 on the tax levy?
give me a moment and I can tell you. $3.15,
3.15?
yes.
So it's a 3.15 increase.
And the challenge that we're struggling with here, this is not just an 18-19 problem that we're looking at. It's also a 19-20 problem, because that's where, based upon our projections, we basically go in a hole for about $2.1 million. Now, to Mr. Machada's point, if we get another $1 million in equalization aid, well, then we're only in a hole $1.1 million. But if we start cutting back this year, every dollar we cut back this year is going to create a larger hole for us next year, which is only going to be one of two things: a much larger tax increase the following year, or reductions in the budget and in our educational program. That's the challenge.
Our governor is supposedly going to have almost all of the funding, equalization funding, done by next year. That's his plan. If you had the meeting with them, didn't you, in New Brunswick just recently, in the last month and a half, I think?
Yes, we discussed personnel and relationships. We didn't discuss the budget.
You didn't, no, I'm not our budget. I'm talking about his proposal and
Yeah.
his.
No, his budget. We didn't discuss
Right.
his budget.
You know, I mean, he's talking about that. You know, look, I'm just saying my opinion, how I feel, okay? You know, I heard from different people here over a period of time about parents that have to work two jobs, both parents have to work jobs, you know, they need childcare, everything else that goes with that, you know. I look at that and I understand where they're coming from, you know. Mrs. Bloom says $9, you know, but it's still $9.
Yeah, I mean, we had this conversation when we talked about, paying for sports, and I remember Dr. Labby saying about our parents and what they could afford and painted quite a dire picture. So I can't think that anything people wouldn't appreciate. But I'm mostly concerned, I think we have way too much money in this healthcare line. You put an extra $300,000 for this, an extra 5% for this, an extra this. We over budgeted $1 million in healthcare last year, and it looks like we just seem to want to over budget it again this year. Where's the $1 million from last year that we over budgeted? Why we keep over budgeting this healthcare line, and it just doesn't look kosher anymore to me. There's, you want $300,000 in case people switch plans. Look, you want data? Look at the data. People are switching plans from a POS from the PPO down to the POS and the HMO. They're going down. They're not going up when people are switching plans. Look at the numbers from last year. Why would we project an increase there, a potential $300,000 increase? This healthcare line, you have 14% here, you want to put a 5% reserve, you're putting way too much money in this healthcare line just to go over the 2% cap.
Well,
Because you can. I think it's too much.
Well, and I can answer that question. I mean, if you look at 2017-18, we're projected to have a surplus from our budget of $2.7 million, of which 1.9 is going to tax relief in the 18-19 budget.
Right, but
So you asked where it went, that's the fall through, and then that's the reapplication to raise the tax levy.
The surplus tax relief this year is less than it was last year. Last year it was less than this year, so that's going down, not up. And that was a huge increase in surplus with that healthcare line.
It has to go to 2 different years, so part of it goes to 18-19 and part of it goes to 19-20. So that's where that money from the current year would go. And as far as what I budgeted for changes in coverage, it wasn't about changes in coverage that are necessarily going from the POS to the PPO or anything like that. It was when people get married, when people have children. We do have pretty young staff, and we've seen a lot of those changes this year.
But we've never budgeted that before, and we've never budgeted a huge increase, and we've never gone over budget because we always seem to be over budget in the healthcare number. So we never had to put an extra $300,000 if people got married. Now we want to do it this year. It just seems like we're trying to get over the 2%.
And again, the challenge that we have is when you look at the things that we've had to add to this budget, I mean, we wanted to equalize the salaries for our teachers because we were losing teachers, and we had to do that. We invested in security, campus monitors, we're talking class 3 officers. All of these things add incremental cost. Unfortunately, as we corrected the teacher's salary guide, that's putting additional pressure on our budget. That's, in large part, what's creating the challenge in the last year. So we've got to be committed to funding that.
Well,
And it was the right decision to correct our teachers' salaries. We had to address the retention issue, but now it becomes a job of us having to fund that.
And let me, obviously it's hard economic times, and I think everyone's here's intentions are honorable and want to look out for the taxpayer of Sayreville. But I also think when you're living in hard times, it's public education that gets people out of that gives our kids an opportunity and a road to a better life, and that's what we all want. I know everyone up here wants that for our students. And Sayreville, you can say it however you want, our board, way before I was on here, has always been fiscally conservative. Matter of fact, we're one of the lowest spending per student in the state. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I know the product we put on for the amount of money our town pays is astounding. That being said, I understand $9. It does, yeah, it's $9. But when families are struggling at home, you know what they want? I want to be able to send my kid to go to school, and he has a baseball field to play on, and he has a football field to play on, and he has computers in his classroom, and he has good teachers, and all those things cost money. And to Tom's point with the pilots, we're not getting it there, and now we're looking to cut on our end too. We can't, we're slicing it down on both ends. And to me, and I know we've talked about asking the town to help out a little bit, but, we can only slice that back so much. I'm a taxpayer, just like everyone at this table is a taxpayer. But, I choose to invest in our kids. I think that money going back there is for the greater good of our town. And you saw our kids today. You see they succeed when they have things. The more we can give them, the more we can, add to this budget to continue to bring in good people and good programs for our kids. And again, it's just one guy's opinion up here. And I know people who want to cut it less or get down to 2. I know they're not against, they're for honorable things too. But I just think, in my opinion, as a parent with 3 kids in town, that's what, we got great kids here. We got great products. And I think we have to keep moving forward and adding stuff for our kids. And that, that's going to cost some money. I think it's the right thing to, again, I've always run on this. And they can vote me out if you think your taxes are too, that's where my values are. They're in education. And I think that's where money should go. So that the town's 4 and we're 2.7. Maybe we should be more. We're and it's okay that our values can be different. But for me, and that's why I ran, and I'll always run on that it should be on the kids. That's where the money should be. And that's just, again, my opinion. I want everyone to know it. If you vote for me next time, if you don't, know that that's where I stand. And and again, there's good people up here, and it's a good discussion to have. But I just think that we've cut so much for so long, and the people that our teachers, our administrators, the job they've done is unbelievable. Some of them are sitting up here now, and they know they've worked for with less and for less, but have always done an amazing job. And I just think let's talk about what our values are. You know what I mean? And it doesn't make one person better than the other, but I think if anything, we should spend that money on our programs and our kids.
If I may, look, there's 2 things that we have to spend money on, and one we addressed with the teachers. They needed the raise that they got. I think we were unanimous in giving them that raise. Excuse me. We have to pay for that raise. We have to be responsible now and pay for it somehow, some way, while not cutting services for our students. Okay, tricky. The other thing is security. We're not rushing to judgment on security. This is nothing we've just said, just because of the Parkland situation, we're now doing X, Y, and Z. We've been talking for years about security. And we're at the point now where the decisions I think we're making and the things that you're going to see in the next couple of months and vote on are must-haves to keep our students and staff safe. Okay? Now, those 2 things obviously are a huge part of the budget, and they have to be funded somehow. And I'm sorry, we have to ask for a few dollars from the taxpayers. And this is my, 2.5 years, I don't think we've really asked. Have we gone above in the last couple of budgets? I don't believe we have, right? Above our 2%, or slightly above?
Last year, it worked out to 2% if you factored in the debt service. Because debt service had a reduction because we did a refunding on bonds.
Right. So we're asking, I think we're at $111 per household, I believe. That's the number. Can we get it down to 99, 98, below 100? We probably could. I'm not quite sure how much that is in dollars. But we got to be careful, guys. We have to be careful because we are talking, and I hate to spend people's money, and I think we're extremely conservative, and I think we're extremely responsible as a board and as administrators. We don't spend money foolishly here. And what we do, and I tell people all the time, what we do and what our staff does with the money we have, it's almost miraculous at times. I just don't think we're asking for that much of an increase for 2 very important items: teachers' raises and security. No, that's just my opinion.
May I just go back and answer Mr. Bashada and Mrs. Backo's questions?
Yes.
So, Mr. Bashada, right now, at the recapitulation of balances, our balance in fund balance is 1.88%, so it's less than 2. If we were, the dollar amount difference between the health benefit, the enrollment adjustment, and the bank cap, that's $830,000 from the tentative budget. So that would reduce our fund balance down to $805,000, which is 0.93%. And then, Mrs. Backo, you had asked.
Is that 1.88 your projection for the end of this year, or what was that for? I missed it.
That's in the recapitulation balance is what our fund balance would be.
So that's your projection for June 30th?
So is there a rule of thumb as to what a school balance should be?
the fund balance, excuse me, should be? Is it,
It's 2%.
it's 2%? We're down, we would be at what? Max.
It's a 2%
Yes.
max.
Right.
But most districts, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but many districts do use that 2%. We also have very limited reserves. So a lot of districts, we're allowed to have, I don't know the number offhand, but we are allowed to have a certain amount of money in maintenance reserve and capital reserve. At this point, we have $1,000.
We still have that 1,000, huh?
Yeah, in maintenance, and then I believe our capital goes down to $130,000 or $140,000. So, but then, with the field coming in less, that would add money, but if we want to use that for the track, then that
Sure.
would also. But correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Becker, your question was the percent increase with the health benefits versus without?
No.
No.
My question was, at the 3.15%, how much in dollars is the health benefits? Over.
$345,887.
And the other one is enrollment, how much is that?
$332,424, and then there's also banked cap of $8,039.
Any other questions or discussion on the budget?
Oh, just one thing. Mr. Esposito, what happened is many years ago, there were some districts that were running 10, 12, 15, 30% in their reserves. And what happened is, they got wind of this. Christie came in, you remember? And what he did, he took, I forgot how many $100,000 out of the reserve, and that way, what we did to counter because we never thought that would happen, what we did is the money at the end of the year, we were putting into the capital reserve because he couldn't touch that. So that's what happened, but that was what's going on. Some districts were doing it. We didn't do that, I can honestly say that, because they were like, the numbers that were astronomical, that you couldn't believe how some of the districts that claimed poverty really weren't,
Yeah, interesting, sure.
One of the things, I brought this up before, Mr. Sayak, is, national in New Jersey, I think one of the things that we have to do is get our legislators to look at these Abbott districts really where they are. I mentioned Jersey City and Hoboken, and they're fighting the tax reevaluation on the properties up there because they don't want to pay their fair share. They're in the trough so deep that, they just want to keep on taking it away from everybody else. I think the New Jersey School Board Association get the governor's ear and tell him, make sure that the districts that can afford it, that are Abbott districts, are getting reduced, and the districts that can't get the money. As an example, I watched some of the testimony in Chesterfield and Millville down south. They're getting peanuts, and the people are so upset down there. He says what happens is all the money goes from the river north, which is not fair to other districts.
Well, there's a power struggle going on right now with school funding as well between Governor Murphy and Senator Sweeney.
Correct.
With, combating, school funding plans and approaches. And I think Sweeney is more aligned with, the philosophy that you're speaking of. Any other discussion or comments on the budget?
In the facilities lease purchase, is that the front end loader for Jimmy or no?
Facilities lease purchase, Ms. Hill?
Un momento, I don't have it open. I believe it is, but I can tell you everything.
What's the three spreaders on
I believe it's, it's the spreaders
the front loader?
The front
It's a
loader.
truck too.
on auto scrubbers. Yeah.
How much is the front end loader? Is it like $78,000 or something like that? And there's nothing in the budget to replace that piece of equipment that we cut out of the budget that would have prevented Eric's 3-day stand here over spring break, or no?
Yeah, that's in there. It's as a lease purchase.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And
And that's being funded, just so everyone's aware, the first year of that lease purchase is being funded by E-rate funding.
okay. Now, when you do the new estimated calculation of taxes, the calculations down here are just wrong. I think you're using the wrong average assessed value on the debt service and current fund numbers.
I have my tax bill with me if you need it.
Oh, and, I'm looking at the tax rate for 2017-18. It's not, doesn't agree to the tax bill, so the assessed valuation you're using
If you
from the
want to
state.
send me what you have, 'cause
I have the
called
right, I have the right,
town
I have them right here.
Okay, yeah.
Let's use the right numbers so we get the
Sure.
right numbers, but
Sure.
definitely down the bottom here, the differences are, there's definitely, I'll talk to you after the meeting
Sure.
and show you if there's some
Yeah,
issues
that's
with
fine.
it.
How, are we off, up or down?
The tax rate for 2017-18 is higher than what my bill was, so. So the difference is gonna be smaller, so we gotta, if we plug the right numbers in, we will get the right numbers, that's the key here.
Of course, yeah.
All right, any other discussion on the budget? All right, and Mr. Balco, please tie out with Ms. Hill on the
Yeah.
text, because we want to make sure for May 1 that number is right and we're all in agreement. I don't want any surprises on May 1 on that one.
I remember we talked about this last year, I showed you what the assessor has, but you used something on the DOE
Yeah, but
website.
I'm pretty sure the information I have in here I got from the assessor. I wanted it as up
Well,
to date.
the average assessed homes look right, but the calculations are, I think it's still pulling the old number or something like that.
All right, we'll take a look at it.
And then-
Yeah.
How far before May 1st are we going to get an updated budget to look at before the vote?
I don't know if the finance committee wants to meet again before then.
Yeah, I think we should. Absolutely.
Because that's the next meeting, right? The budget?
Yeah, May 1 would be the adoption. So finance is going to meet, it's probably going to be early next week.
Yeah, we'll come up with a date.
You're probably going to be looking at, Wednesday or Thursday of next week for the budget. The latest will be Friday.
Well, Wednesday's the National Honor, if we can look at Thursday, probably be the better day. I think the National Honor, is it the?
No, National Honor Society's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
It's Thursday.
The
so-
spaghetti
is
dinner is
Wednesday.
Thursday.
Thursday, this week is spaghetti dinner.
Okay.
The National
Miss-
Honor Society
Society
spaghetti dinner. We're not just
Nice
having
or
dinner.
full.
Gotcha.
And
It's
Mr.
getting late.
Sayreville.
All right, anything else on the budget? All right, we're still on committee reports, and hopefully we can move through this. For governance, just Mrs. Rubio and Mr. Walsh, please see me after this meeting. I need to know your availability for Thursday afternoon at 3:30 for a governance committee meeting to look at the PIC policy and our advertising policy. Anything on student achievement? Okay, anything on personnel?
Personnel met earlier this evening. We were updated on all the new open positions. Dr. Labby spoke about the positions we filled in, and we voted on and approved earlier this evening. I'll make it short and sweet.
Thank you. Delegate to New Jersey School Boards, I've
Could we
complete.
just go back, for the committee meetings, we used to get minutes, and the only ones I pretty much see consistently are curriculum. I don't really see, like, we're not getting minutes for finance anymore, and
Okay.
I only see curriculum.
I think Mrs.
And I-
Hill's been a little bit preoccupied, and maybe,
We've sent
I
them
think
out.
Dr.
fairly-
Achilles gave his at the Personnel Committee meeting today, so
Right,
I'll
so-
make sure that he emails that to the entire board.
Okay. Delegate to New Jersey School Boards, I finished my presidency. It was great. In the interest of time, I'll tell you the rest of the story later. Moving on to discussion.
after
Any
adjournment,
other
you mean?
discussion item? Pardon?
Later, you mean after we adjourn, or?
Maybe next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Any other discussion items? Mr. Bishada?
I have one item that was brought up to me by some other people. This past Thursday night at the Madison Firehouse, they had a meeting about putting a 26-inch gas line by Morgan Creek. It's not the creek, it's the creek. They're going to run down there, and it's supposed to go from Old Bridge out through the bay into New York to supply gas. Now, the problem that I have is with this gas line, if you remember what happened in Edison about 15 years ago,
You remember that, Dr.
Dr.
Labby? Do
Labby,
you remember
I
that,
think
Dr.
that's
Labby?
fond
More than
recollections
15
of
years
that.
ago. It was 1993, Tom.
oh, was it 25 years ago?
Yeah.
Huh?
Wow.
Yeah, I was in it. We
You,
lost it. I was blown
you
out of
got
my bed.
Okay, I guess, unscathed.
Well,
But
some would
anyhow-
argue that I'm okay.
Well, save that for another discussion. But anyhow, the point that I'm bringing up is that there's ordinances that were still being discovered, which are shells from the 1918 Morgan plant explosion. And that gas line is going to be close to our Eisenhower School, not only Lemire, but also the Eisenhower School. I would ask that you or someone or a committee get together and discuss this and find out how and what impact this could possibly have on not only the residents, but the school itself, forbidding something happen. You know,
Are they doing this work during the day? Or would it be at night?
well, this is a meeting that was scheduled last week. I got wind of it, I couldn't make it. You know, I'm recovering from the eye surgery like I had mentioned earlier. But some people from Sayreville did go there and brought up a lot of questions, and the Edison issue was brought up about that issue also. So, you know, it's a safety factor involving our students.
And who's installing the line, Tom?
I didn't get the
gas
drift of it.
companies?
No, this is gas coming from, I guess, Pennsylvania, making the route through the area
This has
and
been in
winding
works
up,
forever.
coming through the Morgan section, going out through the Raritan River
Okay,
Bay.
like a pipeline almost.
Correct, yes.
Okay, a
It's a
gas
26,
pipeline, okay.
26 is a pretty big pipeline to push natural gas.
So who would approve that? Wouldn't that be Borough Council, or would that not even go through them? I mean,
I remember talking about that when I was on the Borough Council. That's how long ago we've been talking about
Yeah, but I think
this. So it's been quite some
Company
time.
properties would be used for a storage area for some of the pipes, I thought. That's why they rocked it up and bought it,
I remember
actually. so.
discussions, there was
Planning- nothing on planning
environmental
board?
issues.
No.
and-
No, nothing yet.
but would the Borough Council have to approve something like that, or?
I'm sure they'll
Could-
discuss it at the council meeting.
Okay.
One other thing to the council meeting, you might, I don't know if the Blue Ribbon Committee wants me, there is another proposal for another few hundred houses on the Mako property. And another one, the very, very low estimate of children there too.
Yeah, they like their low
Yeah, and I
estimates,
think they're
don't
like
they?
4-bedroom homes, but we're not getting a lot of kids there either, so.
Yeah.
No need to worry, but you might want to just jot that down, that there's another.
My favorite was that they likened it to this lovely place in Atlanta, Georgia. And I said, people go to Atlanta, Georgia to retire. People don't go to the Raritan River to retire.
Right.
If they're living there, they're going to have kids.
But this is an additional
This
to
is, yeah,
that.
this is not
something-
that property.
This is on the
something
Mako,
else.
yeah, this is by,
All right,
that's
we'll see
more
what we
houses.
can find out about
Yeah.
that. Maybe, Erin, Ms. Hill, you and I can, talk and maybe with Mr. Frankel, figure out what's going on and get some more information about that.
One other thing, I got a hold of the Borough Clerk. Zoning Board is being sued by the Drug Rehab Center.
Of course.
Okay.
There's a court date, Anthony, you're on that, you're very well aware of it.
Yes.
And again, there's litigation going, so just to keep everybody informed what's going on towards our Eisenhower School District.
Any other items for discussion?
This is probably the least important thing we'll talk about tonight, but I think it's worth bringing up. We had some great students here tonight. Everyone saw, Kevin mentioned the Hall of Fame, but the Hall of Fame is, it has its own rules. It's separate from the Board of Ed. This past weekend, one of our alumnus reached the pinnacle of his career, I guess you could say. Everyone knows John Bon Jovi went in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I think is an, ridiculously, high achievement. And I think the board, and we don't have to decide tonight, should consider recognizing that achievement somehow, whether it's through resolution or, naming something. I don't know what we would want to do, but I think it's at least something we should, and again, I know it's late tonight, we don't have to figure it all, but I think it's worth recognizing one of our alumni who reached the pinnacle of his, a very high achievement. I don't know if we have any other national
I
Hall of
should
Famers.
point out that he was one of the first people that was nominated for induction. And how long, what did we celebrated 15 years?
Yeah, at least.
We
Yeah.
have yet to get a response from anybody in his camp. We
Well,
have tried
I
everything.
understand, but I understand, the Hall of Fame has its rules and it's separate than this body up here. So I'm not,
Yeah, absolutely.
understand, I'm not knocking our Hall of Fame. I'm
But I mean,
saying,
people have said, oh, he's the one who should be there. Why isn't he there? Well, we can't put him
Well, that's-
in if he doesn't accept.
what I know, that's your,
Right, so
and I
that's-
understand that
yeah.
that's their rule. I'm saying as a board,
Yeah.
we should recognize one of our former students
Oh,
without mandating his attendance but for honoring him for how he's represented Sayreville, not only through his Hall of
Not
Fame.
even his attendance. It's just, we can't get anybody from his
I
group to respond.
I
to say
understand.
yes or no.
I'm not knocking the Sayreville
Yeah.
Hall of Fame or
No, I would
its
never-
members
I
or
wouldn't
its.
think he would come,
I'm
but-
saying just without any, we don't need to hear from him to honor him. You know what I mean? And if we do, and he's nice enough to respond, that's great. But I think we can honor him without, getting anything in return. Just doing it for the, the nice light he's shown on Sayreville.
Maybe Dr. Parnell can get him to come.
I think what I'll do is maybe I'll reach out to his sister-in-law on Facebook and see if maybe we can,
Yeah, we went to school.
Yes, exactly. Well, we'll see if that route works.
Okay.
Just one thing.
I will also say to you that when I came out on stage at National, I came out to "We Weren't Born to Follow," and I concluded my presidency with "Who Says You Can't Go Home."
There you go.
There you go.
Mr. Esposito.
Just one thing, I want to just publicly thank Eric and Mike for coming in on their vacation last week. I believe 3 days did you spend working and saving our servers?
Eric hasn't shaved yet.
I'm just going to say that.
Very good. So I just want to thank you guys very much for what
Yeah,
you did.
outstanding.
You know, really, really great job.
Thank you very much.
Kudos.
Anyone else from the board on discussion items? Hearing none, we'll open up.
I'd like to ask something.
Really?
Just real
Really?
quick. Ms. Hill mentioned before the fact that we do have a number of different companies now that are interested in advertising on our website or via our bomber blasts and so forth. In fact, I just put that in my recent talk soup. One of the problems that we're having, though, and this is something that the revenue partners, the company that we're using to help us advertise, expressed to us, is that in our current Board of Education policy, we are using language from the statute with regard to advertising on buses. And with regard to that language, it states that the board must approve any advertising before we actually put it on our buses. We're going to have a governance committee meeting to address that, but I would like to ask the board to give me the authorization to go ahead, using my judgment as superintendent, to not hold things up, because if we hold things up, we could potentially lose these advertisers, to go ahead and advertise on our website. So I'm asking you to trust in my judgment to authorize me with the responsibility of going ahead and approving these advertisements according to the standards and criteria set forth in our policy. Not for our buses, just for our website. I'm asking you to do that until the Board of Education policy is written and approved twice by you.
Can I have a motion to suspend our policy requiring board approval of all advertising as it pertains to the website only? Motion.
Can
I have a motion by Mr. Callahan. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mrs. Bloom. Comments?
Yes, I don't have a problem with that, but could you at least forward us via email what it's going to look like when you get it? Because sometimes, I think that sometimes there could be
Yes.
some local things that
Yes.
you might not be aware of that maybe we might know.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none, we probably need a roll call on this because we're suspending policy. Can I get a roll call?
Mr. Balco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mr. Bishada?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Rubio?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Sayak?
Yes. Anyone other than Dr. Labby have anything for discussion? Hearing none, I'll open it up to public. If you wish to speak, please state your name and address for the record. Yes. And if you could come to the microphone so we could hear you and just repeat your name and address,
Carrie
please.
Kenny, 240 Garrity Street.
Yes.
First, I'd just like to say I'm new to the game, so I do have a lot of questions, but I'm going to only ask maybe two of them because I don't think I could clarify everything. Just out of curiosity.
And by the way, feel free to see us afterwards too. If you either Dr. Labby, myself, we can answer your questions.
I'm just curious, what year in the contract your teachers are in?
We are in year one.
Year one, so it's newly negotiated contract that their salaries increased. I assume that means their portion of the health care also increased, right? As they make more money, they pay more toward their health care.
Correct.
Okay. And so when you talk about extra money in healthcare going into surplus, that's not only what the teachers pay, right? I mean, they pay a percentage and then the board pays another percentage and then any surplus. So we're not saying that the teachers are, in essence, funding other stuff in the building because they're paying extra. Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Correct.
I'm a little bit confused about the prescription plan, and I know it doesn't actually apply to me, but I was just trying to wrap my head around it when you were talking about it, because I work in the public sector, so does my husband. We pay toward our benefits. I pay $5 when I pick up my prescription, and that's it. But I'm kind of understanding that you have like a pot of money, and then you're paying prescriptions. Like,
We just started this. We're self-insured. So basically, the board is contributing money into basically our own bank account, as our employees paying money into our own bank account. That money is self-contained, and then we've got a third-party claims administrator that processes the claims, for the prescriptions, and then bills us every month for the claims.
So whereas with a traditional insurance company, the insurance company bears all the risk, so that if your claims experience exceeds your premium, the insurance company has to pick that up. In our case, if our claims experience exceeds our premium, we have to pick that up as a board.
And that was more cost-effective for the board to do it that way?
Yes.
Okay. And then I think my last question has to do a little bit with what Mr. Walsh was saying before about, we, as a taxpayer, we do want our kids to have a place where, they're getting a great education, and I truly believe that my children are. I'm very happy with all the experiences we've had so far. I have 4 children. And, having a great field, and, the football field seems like a lot of money, but, I'm not judging that. I'm just curious, when you mention, football fields, baseball fields, I'd have to say that I don't agree that we have great baseball fields to play on. Is there some plan in the future for that with this, like this $375,000, $200,000 extra for track? Is there some money in the budget for other sports as well, or are we just focusing on that area?
We've had extensive problems with the baseball field, and to correct them is going to take a substantial investment. We're still trying to figure out how to address that issue. It's part of our district strategic plan, which we just adopted in September, and one of the possibilities was a referendum to fund that, but the board hasn't decided yet whether it's something we want to go, from a turf perspective and do a referendum, whether we just want to try to, regrade, the area and plant regular grass. But the challenge that we have over there is it's a water table issue, and we've got a drainage problem there. That's what's creating the problem with the field. We fixed it, Mr. Bashada, about 5 years ago, spent several $100,000 to get it, regraded, adjust the water table there, new grass, and it's back in the same condition because of the drainage issues that are there.
So I understand that the football field is a safety issue as well, but is that money, has that been just budgeted over time to redo the field? Is it a grant? I mean, where does that, is it just coming out of general sports fund, that $375,000, where?
That's coming out of money, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Hill, that we put into our capital reserve. So we've been, over time, building up that money because we knew that this project was coming.
Okay, thank you. And again, I would just like to say that I totally agree with Mr. Walsh and that we are turning out some great kids. I feel personally mine are turning out okay, but, from what I see, I'm really think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. And if you have more questions, we can entertain them afterwards. I know that it's getting late. Anyone else for a public?
I think so.
Now, you knew you were going to speak. I'm surprised you're not sitting right over there.
There was no room. They took my chair. I thought my name was on it. Barbara Kilcummins. I think after receiving aid for 2 years, if this budget was ever on the referendum, like it has been in the past, the residents would have seen that we received money, discretional aid, whatever, almost over $2 million. They would turn the budget down. And not that they disagree with the teachers, whatever, their salaries, but it's like, how much can you still give? And Mr. Bashad is right. It's a disgruntled public out there with the raise of all the taxes. It's very difficult to, make ends meet for these young people with families and whatnot. Not that they're against, Sayreville's providing a good education, but the last year when we received the aid, I was at the meeting and we received almost $1 million, and they had it appropriated and spent before the board even discussed it. And a lot of it was an administrative cost, which I'm always adamant and against when we overspend on administration. That's why the teachers are well deserving it now. It bothers me to even bring this up, is I felt that Sayreville received a real black eye with the walkout of the parkland and how we handled that. If you didn't want the students to go out, there should have been something done in say the gymnasium somewhere, the auditorium. Other schools, I spoke to teachers in Linden and other schools where they did not want the students to go out, but they had something done inside the school. They had, they recited all the biographies of all the Parkland students and teachers that were killed. They had a moment of silence, but I received phone calls from Florida. My nephew's in Florida. What, is Sayreville in the news again? This went national. It gave Sayreville a black eye. I'm sure, Mr. Sayak, you being the president of the national board, that you had to be questioned by other states and other people around. We handled it very, very poorly. It was a very embarrassing situation to see this in the media the way it was, full-blown. And then collected from all the state receiving roses. Well, we wouldn't allow her to even get the roses. We looked like we were anti-Parkland, anti-student involvement, and it sent out a wrong message. And I think we just handled it very, very poorly, and it really gave Sayreville a black eye. The football crisis, Dr. Labby received accolades from everyone, how he handled it. But this, I'm telling you, people, Colorado, Georgia, North and South Carolina, and Florida, of comments of calling my friends, my relatives, what's going on in Sayreville. It was extremely embarrassing. It looked like we were not anti-security that we want and everything else, but we had no remorse, nothing for the children in Parkland or what these students were trying to do. And this was throughout the whole nation. And we just received too much in the spotlight from the media in a negative attitude. So I'm sorry to say that, but I think it was just handled very, very poorly.
Just some background on Parkland, and look, I agree with you that, certainly the media coverage was unfortunate. What you should know about those events is that most of that was generated by the interest of one parent, not a student, a parent. Hang on, let me go.
Okay, I don't care if it's a student, a parent, anyone, but you were anticipated because this was throughout the nation.
And we were Mr. Brown was in touch with students from the high school. There was no interest in doing anything. I was in touch with Mr. Lewis, our student representative. He indicated there was no interest in anyone doing anything.
But do you see how bad that looks, like having no interest in doing anything? That doesn't sound good either.
But the issue, Mrs. Kilcummins, is we cannot, as a school district, create a forum for students to express their views, pro or con, on a constitutional issue. And Easton, Pennsylvania, actually is seeing the opposite side of this. Easton created that forum in favor of Parkland, in favor of gun control. They now had a student come forward that says, you know what, I'm pro-Second Amendment. I want that same forum created for me. And the district has no choice but to comply, because we can't impart our views on
Well, that's
our
fine.
students.
This is like, to me, it's like an education of civics. A lot of things they shouldn't be involved politically or what. You want to teach them civics. You want to teach them. And from an expression, it should have been encouraged. I'm sorry. It's a lesson in civics. And I just felt very embarrassed for Sayreville, and I think we really got a black eye.
Thank you. Anyone else for public? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Mrs. Bloom, a second by Mr. Walsh. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.